Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the regular meeting of the Borough of Englewood Cliffs Mayor and Council. We're joined tonight by a very special soccer team that we'll talk about more later. It's 8:35 p.m. I apologize that we're starting somewhat late tonight. We have a lot of work to do, but we have to honor the team first. That's the most important thing we're going to do tonight, okay? I call the meeting to order. Can I have a roll call, Madam Clerk?
Mayor Kranjak?
Here.
Councilpersons Wu?
Here.
Song?
Here.
Sabari?
Here.
Park? Here. Aversa?
Here.
Borough Attorney?
Yo.
Borough Clerk? And the U12 soccer champions? So here. Very good.
Okay. I need everyone to please stand.
Council President. Here.
Face the flag, as we always start our meetings with the flag salute, the Pledge of Allegiance, and the soccer team is going to lead it tonight, okay? So go ahead, guys.
Ready?
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Can everybody just please remain standing? Yeah. We had two members of our community pass away very recently. The first member of our community was a 12-year councilman, Jerry Kassoff, and we extend our condolences to his family. The second person, who's an incredible person also, was Ovid Di Fiore. Nancy and I attended his 100th birthday last year. He would have been 101 this year, and he also passed away, and we extend our condolences to his family. And now, something that recently happened, it happened yesterday. There was a New York City police detective who was shot and died in the line of duty. His name is Brian Simonson. He was out there protecting all of us, if you're in New York, just like our police do here in New Jersey. So a moment of silence for him as well. Okay, thank you, everyone. So next on our agenda is the Soccer U12 2019 champions. They're here. This is an indoor league, right? And where did you guys play? Scenic Armory. Okay. And what was your record?
6-1.
6-1. Okay. And who? So, all right. So, if you're a forward, raise your hand. Okay. And if you're a midfielder, raise your hand. If you're a center midfielder, raise your hand. That's what I played. If you're a defender, raise your hand. Somebody's raising their hand on every one of them. And if you're the goalie, raise your hand.
Michael, I play goalie. He's not here. Michael, I play goalie right now.
Okay, so because I was so excited to see AC Milan colors here, which I actually like a lot, I forgot to ask the Borough Clerk to read a very important statement of the Open Public Meetings Act statement. So she's going to read that first, okay? So hold on, guys.
Adequate notice of this meeting was given to the press and posted as required. Date and time of this meeting was legally given as required by the Open Public Meetings Act. This notice is on file with the municipal clerk and posted on the bulletin board. Minutes of this meeting will be made available to the public upon the completion of typing and proofreading by the municipal clerk.
Okay, thank you. So let's now present you with trophies, which is always great. Councilwoman Ellen Park is in charge of the recreation liaison here, and she will do the honors. And then I'd like to just do a photo with everybody, okay? And thank you for coming here. You still have to do your homework tonight, right?
No,
Homework before showers.
I just want to read a little something about this EC team. The EC Nation indoor soccer team was started 4 years ago by a group of Englewood Cliffs fathers. The EC Nation name was coined by Marissa Kochnover. The fathers wanted to challenge our EC boys by playing them against country club soccer teams. In other words, teams that play year-round. In these 4 years, here is what these boys have accomplished. 2015-2016 U8 champions. 2016-2017 U9 champions, 2017-2018 U10 and 11 champions, and this year, 2018-2019 U12 champions.
Who's the leading scorer?
Jeremy.
All right. What's your favorite move?
Scissor.
Scissor, okay. That's a hard move. That's a hard move.
This year youth health team was made up of 6 main players. These boys were supplemented by 10 younger U11 players. Together, they brought home another championship. I want to say there are a few boys out today because they're sick. Anthony Senator, Henry Gill, Frank Patty, and Wesley DeYoung. And I will be calling you guys up one by one. Vince Lombardi. Famous.
Come across. Are your coaches here? Do you want me to take?
Invite the council to the
Come on in. No, coaches, this is not possible without coaches and
This side. You can be one game.
Alright, everybody look up and say cheese!
Cheese.
Thank you very much. It's one of the few times I got in. Thank you so much, Mr. Carey. Play high school.
Yay.
All right?
Thank you.
I think some of you also were here for the baseball. That's around here. Round third. Be good, guys. Thank you very much. I also want to mention that outside is a food collection that I do every month for the Office of Concern Food Pantry at St. Cecilia's Church in Englewood. I thank everyone who's brought a food donation tonight. The table will be set up until tomorrow morning, so if you forgot and you want to drop something off, you're welcome to do so later or tomorrow. We got a letter from the Office of Concern thanking us for all we did last year, and I promised them we would double it this year, because there's a lot of people who need our help. We're very fortunate and blessed in our community, but there's other people out there who aren't, and there's a lot of working poor in Bergen County, and we need to help them, okay? So thank you. Next on the agenda, it's a bit of old business. We moved it up because we want to talk about the parking problem on Clifton Terrace, which has resulted from a very popular new restaurant there called the Brownstone Pancake Factory, and we thank them for being in town, but we also need to manage our traffic situation better and restore the quality of life for the residents on Clifton Terrace. So what we've been doing, and I thank the residents for reaching out to me, again, the officer in charge of the police department, David Hill, recommended to me and to this council, I related to the council, that we consider restricting parking on Clifton Terrace to residents only. Okay? Now, this is different than, somebody pointed out, oh, Leonia had that problem. Leonia was a throughfare problem. People, they restricted people from driving through. We're not doing that. We just want to restrict the parking only to residents. It's also a dead end, so there's no through driving. So I'd like to have it was the Borough Administrator, were you going to speak on this, or was the police officer going to speak on it?
Actually, the police officer that's here can't really speak on it, but,
And thank you for being here, but you can't speak on this.
Point of order,
well,
Mayor?
he's not in traffic.
Yeah,
I spoke to Lieutenant Hill,
Right.
and there were some concerns about resident-only parking, which we're limited with our choices. You're absolutely right, Mayor. You know, there are certain things you can do, certain things you can't do. So that it really boiled down to either having no parking at all on the street, which I don't think any of the residents would like, or limited parking in the form of resident parking. The concern with residents-only parking is that we have a commuter possibility issue. That's the only issue. I personally think that's something we should try and deal with at this point, because I don't really see another alternative. That's what we're here for tonight, to discuss it. But if anybody here in the council has any other suggestions,
But if I may, but the
please.
commuters to the residents on Clifton Terrace, the commuters that we're thinking, that we're addressing are Englewood Cliffs residents.
correct, sorry.
So if that street, like other streets in town, become a resident-only parking, then residents from the north would come and park on your streets and maybe take a bus to go to work into the city. So that's something else that the police department and the governing body have to look into. They want to do what's best for the residents of Clifton Terrace, so everything is being monitored. I do know that Lieutenant Hill personally went and spoke to one of the managers at the restaurant, so they're trying to come up with a good solution for everyone, but more
Point of
specifically
order,
our
Mayor?
residents.
okay. Thank you. Yes.
Point of order. So I know the residents on Clifton Terrace, they've been reaching out to me as well, since December last year, and, we've been looking into this situation, and we want to, move as rapidly as possible, but we want to make sure all our I's are dotted and T's are crossed. I had a conversation with the borough attorney today, and, I'd like to, hear your, opinion on this and how we move forward.
Certainly. I had a meeting also with Officer in Charge Hill. We discussed the situation. One of the problems that we have at this juncture is that despite the fact that the residents have made complaints, obviously to the mayor and to Council President O, which demonstrates like the first bipartisan cooperation we've seen in this town in a long time, we've got a scenario that only 3 complaints have been made to the police department. So what I would encourage the residents of Clifton Terrace to do is to make complaints to the police department. We need to demonstrate that there is a need to put this ordinance there, because the business, the commercial establishment there, and what the mayor said about Leonia is not 100% correct, because it was residential going through, but it also was a parking issue. And the commercial businesses are the ones that ended up challenging this ordinance that went through Leonia, and we don't want to have a problem with that. So if we get you folks that live on Clifton Terrace to make the complaints to the police department, the summonses will be issued, and then that supplements our record. Because like I said, of all these situations, and I know that Council President O and Mayor Kranjak both contacted me about this, and they're very, very, very focused on this issue.
What summons would be issued?
sorry?
What summons would be issued right now? Just 1 hour parking?
Well, there's 1 hour parking, but there's also issues with regards to if cars are blocking a path for the fire department so that a fire vehicle can get through there and things along those lines. And just the fact that you're calling the police department, everything you do when you call is logged. Okay, so it's all in there. And that gives me the opportunity, so if this ordinance or this change or this, gets challenged in some way, I can say 73 complaints in the span of 4 weeks. Okay? And that demonstrates that there was a need and that there was a problem. So all I'm asking, okay, is that you know that this council and the mayor have dedicated themselves to trying to resolve this issue. I just need you guys to make the complaints to the police department. calling council personnel, calling the mayor, it's a great idea, but call the police.
Well, actually, I know the residents are thinking what I'm thinking. You were all here. There was probably about 10 or 12 of you that came up to the microphone back in December, and expressed your concerns, the problem, and it was very clear from that moment that we had a problem, and I don't think that it's necessary to inundate the police department with phone calls when we are actually the governing body up here, and the police department works for us. We know of a situation in town that needs to be rectified. This is completely different than Leonia, okay? So let's not even get lost. No one's going to sue over this, and if they do, they're going to lose, right? So I would want to find a way to find relief for the residents tonight, because that's why we're here, that's why they're there.
It's from...
And I asked the borough attorney to write a draft of an ordinance through the borough administrator for tonight for action. So has that been done?
The due diligence, you see, what's remarkable to me is even when I agree with you, you attack.
I'm not attacking you, I'm just saying I don't agree with you, but
here's the scenario.
have you done what I asked?
I have done the due diligence necessary before we draft something along those lines.
So you haven't done the
What I'm
ordinance?
asking is that the folks on that street make the complaints. I spoke with Officer Hill, Officer in Charge Hill. He agrees with me that that's the way that we need to do this, so that we can actually supplement the record and make a strong case. And if you think that the Brownstone, with their money, is not going to have a issue, we don't even know what was granted to them with regards to their certificate of occupancy. So that needs to be looked at also.
That has nothing to do with this.
Yes, it does.
Well, we do know that the 1 hour parking, I think, is not a good idea, because I
No.
don't think that solves any
Yeah.
issue, so
Well, what I would...
we couldn't agree on
So,
that.
look, I think what could actually happen tonight is, we could pass an ordinance or introduce one, and between now and then, you guys could inundate the police department with your complaints, because they're still going with the new ordinance won't be effective for another, how many days?
March 13th.
I'm okay with that.
March 13th, right? So I think that would solve the problem, and, I think we could open to the public
I
also.
think that's a
for
good
this.
idea.
We have it, so it's gonna, we have it to be open to the public.
Why don't we just open to the public?
Yeah, so, could I have a motion to open to the public on just this issue, okay? On just,
Just this issue.
So moved.
all in favor? Yeah, yes, sir. Please come to the microphone. Public speaking rules here are,
Yeah, 2 or 3 months ago,
you can just take your name and address.
my name is Earl Williams,
Thank you.
31 Clifton Terrace. I live toward the end. But what I recommend, what should happen, we have a brownstone down in Edgewater. They have valet parking. They should be mandatory here to have valet parking to put the people's cars in the areas, not down the street where we live. Okay, that should be mandatory. Valet parking, they have it down there, and they have the control of people's cars where they're putting the cars. Valet parking, that's not my only complaint.
Yeah, I think, do we have an ordinance that restricts parking to the premises that, I don't think we let people park in other do you know about this?
I don't know about that, but I'm pretty sure there can be an agreement made between the owners of the restaurant and across the
It
street.
should be.
I thought we had an ordinance in place that restricts parking for commercial establishments to only that establishment and not valet parking. I see a lot of head shaking, yes, but we need to check that. I agree, that would be an elegant
That
solution.
would be the answer to the problem, because this way, when people come in, their cars are being parked in a certain area, not down the block where we live, where I live.
Right.
You know, and in front of driveways, people can't get out their driveways. They're putting cones, we putting cones out in our driveways, the people, keep people from parking in there. And you have to come through there and see all those cars parked through there.
I did.
It's unbelievable.
I did, I saw it. I went last weekend. Maybe council can look into that ordinance to see if we need to change the ordinance about
Valet parking.
parking on a premises versus restricting.
I don't think there is.
But can we enforce that?
Works in other places, but they have, they have...
Hello.
Hi.
My name is Veronica Williams. I'm also at 31 Clifton Terrace, Inglewood Terrace. I'm sorry. What's your name again? I'm sorry, sir. Al, okay, the last time I was here for a meeting, which was also a couple months ago, and I was told to, if I see a car parked, that shouldn't be there, like, my situation last time was, there was commercial truck that I saw that had no plate on the back of it, which I found to be very disturbing, and again, my mother had saw commercial trucks in the block with no commercial plates on the vehicle, which I know that is not right.
It's illegal.
Okay, another thing is, I was told, call the police. Again, because I really want this on record, I cannot call the police. My problem is that I'm a targeted individual. Every time I went to try to get a cell phone back in July and August, every time I got a phone, they got my number. And in my case, if I tried to call the police, they would stop my phone from calling. I remember, I know this is kind of outside the territory here, but I just want to kind of let you know what's going on. So in my case, even if I see something, I'm not going to be able to call. The only thing I can do is go to and request the police department, which I did back in August, but it seems like a couple of times, I was kind of much turned away. To be honest with you, I didn't really feel like I was really, truly, honestly, wanting to really help me. Okay? My parents are here tonight. On our way to the meeting tonight, there was a car that was parked a couple doors down from us, and as we were trying to leave out the block, there was an SUV with high beams was on. We was trying to, go straight forward. That car was blocking us, and it was flashing its high beams off and on, off and on. And my father was just not understanding what was going on. He was like, why is he... I said, well, maybe somebody doesn't want to attend this meeting tonight. Okay? All right? So I'm just, a lot of times people would say, oh, well, you know what? You need to just be quiet. Don't say anything. Just ignore it. Go on with your life. But the problem is, I can't really go on with my life if they're also affecting my agency. We have an Allstate agency in the Bronx. I actually went to the Bronx. And I reported it there, because the Engelkes department told me, oh, you need to report it in New York, because the incident started in New York. I did that. I went there, and again, that officer there only took down a part of my report, not the whole thing. He omitted part of it. So, going back to here, again, many times, Martin Luther King, I'm going to work, there's a car parked a few doors down, a black sedan. And I'm getting my car, I'm looking at this car, and I know something's not right. I know it has nothing to do with the people that the car is parked in front of. I know the people there. The car is there, the car is running. I guess he's looking at me, and the car turns around and leaves out the block. There's a lot of... I was at the FedEx about last Thursday. And I was going in there, I needed to use the computer, because I can't use the computer at my job, I can't use the computer at my home. Okay? They have every time I search something, it goes to Bing. They're controlling everything. They see everything that I do. So when this last Thursday in the morning, I went to FedEx. I wanted to really use the computer there. I don't know what happened, but there was a man that I was online. There's a man that came in, and he took a photo. He went to the side, I'm online, and I'm tapping, feel something on my side, I look to the side, and there's the man holding up a cell phone at me. Holding up his phone, I'm looking at him, what am I going to say, what am I going to do? Left out, I watched him, I saw him with a black SUV, 3 big black cases with heavy-duty locks. He comes back in, leaves the cases right at the FedEx and walks back out. I mentioned it to one of the guys that worked there, but, I'm just telling you, it's an ongoing situation. So if you're asking me, call the police, guess what? I can't.
So here's, I feel terribly that you're going through this, but the police should be taking your report here. If you have time tonight on the way out, see the desk officer and tell him that you want to file an incident. And
it goes on and on.
They need to take care of it. They will do that. They will do it tonight.
All right? So I just wanted to, so the next time we come here, we're talking about the parking and the traffic. I remember I told you, put a camera at the end of the block, watch the traffic come through. Yeah, in my case, they can't call, okay? So you understand, I can't call.
Oh, well, you could, yeah, thank you. So I'd be a proponent of valet parking if I could do that, and also be a proponent of residents-only parking. You can do both. So,
I do have a call to the attorney that did the liquor license.
Mary O'Shea, 12 Irving. Regarding valet parking, when we, on the planning board, we approved Madang on 11 Sylvan Avenue. They didn't have enough parking for seats, so we approved valet parking only to keep the customers' cars off the street and off the residential streets, and they have complied very nicely. They have valet parking, which now you can stack the cars.
So valet, but on a
Valet, they
premises.
stack the
Okay.
cars in. Same like when you go to River Palm, very small parking area in Edgewater, they do valet parking, stack the cars in. So they have a big parking lot at the Brownstone, and if they did valet, they would be able to accommodate a lot more cars than they do in slots. Number two, regarding Leonia, I'm familiar with Leonia because I used to have a store there, and Leonia had a problem with people parking their cars to get the buses on Broad Avenue and Grand Avenue. So they put parking restrictions for the early morning hours when people were going to work, so they couldn't park the car and leave it, okay? But when you talk about residential parking, I know we have parking stickers for residents, but Leonia, when they did the thing about the driving through the town, they gave the people a hang tag for their mirror, and maybe part of your ordinance could be a Clifton Terrace hang tag for the residents to put on their car that would be only applicable to Clifton Terrace residents. They would hang it on their mirror, and the police then would know that that car belongs on Clifton Terrace, and it wouldn't be any other resident that would be parking with a sticker to take a bus.
That's a great idea.
Anybody else? Yes, sir, in the back.
I was here last time and talked to you about this. First of all, I would like to address the issue of calling the police. We did.
Your name, please?
Can you state your name and address?
Wolfgang Reich,
Thank you.
10 Clifton Terrace. Again, to start over, we did call the police, and by the second time we called, we just got, there's nothing we can do about it. So there was no enthusiasm about giving me any reason to ever call back again for the same reason. And we have talked to police officers who actually patrol the area. I know they make an effort. I know they come in, they mark the tires to enforce the 1 hour parking. The people got pretty smart. They come and they move the car a few inches, and that idea goes down the drain. So the only tickets they've been able to issue is cars that actually overlap driveways and actually break that rule. As far as the congestion is concerned, I think I addressed that last time with you. Englewood Cliffs residential streets are not made to accommodate parking on both sides and traffic in both directions at the same time. Does not work. Last weekend, I turned into my car, into my street, trying to go home. There were 4 cars lined up, trying to get out of Clifton Terrace, and I sat there, halfway in, halfway out, waiting for these people to come through. While I'm sitting there, there's a 5th car coming down, and would you think they would stop and wait for somebody else to come through? No, they came right down. I sat there, I couldn't get into my driveway, which is the first driveway on Clifton Terrace, for about 5 minutes. And that's not reasonable, okay? So, I would think that the idea of residential parking is a good one. I think the one that Mary O'Shea mentioned before, with maybe a hangar tax or whatever, that's a possibility. But to create a racket, I don't think it's going to work unless there's some real reasons to call the police and they have something to take serious here. Yes?
Sir, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
How long ago did you make that phone call? Weeks ago, months ago?
Weeks ago.
Okay.
It was after the restaurant opened and we got congested, and I couldn't even get back out of my driveway without moving my car back and forth. They were parked close on both sides and across the street, and there's just no way to get around. I mean, it's really upsetting when you live there, and when you think that there should be an emergency up there, up the street somewhere, and a fire truck has to get out there, or a police car has to get up there, it isn't going to happen. Now, it's only a short period of time, for about 3 days a week. But a lot of stuff can happen in 3 days, even for a short period of time. So please, take all these comments under advisement and come up with a solution for us. I'd appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. You know what I think we can do is, for the clerk here, you could isolate the public portion of the meeting when the residents came in December and ask Officer in Charge Hill to go online and listen to that section of their complaints, okay? And it should have a very similar effect to complaining directly to him. At least he'll know what you will complain about. Can you do that?
Someone has to take a ride through there and see it.
Ask him.
Live there.
Yeah, so from the council, I'd like to, I'm sorry,
Somebody else.
there's other people, yes. Yes, sir.
Come here again. Yan Lu, 11 Clifton Terrace. The reason we didn't call the police during the last couple of months, because December we come here, we gave out the concern to the council, we just waiting for this one. Because now the car parking packed, we didn't call. We want one day, like something new rules come over, that's why we didn't call. Before the meeting, I called a few times. Honestly, the one day, you remember the car parking for one week, right? I called the police like a number of times. So the three calls, I don't think there's only 3 calls. Only that car, I called like a number of times. Eventually, they turned the car away, but before the December, I called many times, because I'm living in the beginning of the street, most cars here. And also, I remember one time I called, and a second day I called again, so the car's still here. The second day, the officer, he picked a phone. He said, "You called yesterday?" Yes, I called yesterday. He tried to find the record. He said, "I didn't see any record on the yesterday. You called?" I said, "No, I promised call." I talked to the person, and he said, "I cannot find record." So that's why during the last, from December to now, I didn't call anymore, because I said, you know what? And also, I cannot call the car parking. I call, "Oh, please come over the parking." They come over again. I know the police are very busy. They have to take all the time. Sometimes I call them, they come like 1 hour later or 45 minutes later. So like I said, my neighbor said, on this Sunday, I think the policeman, Ben, he come over. He put a check on the tire. Then the guy come over, they just roll like 1 inch. They get smart. They just roll it 1 inch. Okay, we're good. And I have been waiting for Ben come over, but I believe he's busy. He may never come like in 1 hour. So maybe 2 or 3 hours to come later. All the cars done. So this guy, that's all the customers, they feel very safe to park on the street. They say, look, nobody complain, and no one going to come to take this one, and we don't want to bother the policeman over again. So I talked to the Ben, he told me that, what can I do? They have 1 hour parking. I have to allow them to park in 1 hour. But he may not able to come because I'm the 1 hour to check this one. Also, if this driver, they just roll a little bit 1 inch, what are they going to do? So these people that play the game with us, they've been for a while. Also, it's not for the parking issue, because Englewood, Clifton Terrace, the West Wall Street, if they park on both sides, the driver, they park in the car, they're not going to work in the middle. They're going to work in the grass. All the people working on the grass. You can say after they end, napkins, drinking cups, and smoking pack cigarettes. All on the grass. They just walk on the grass, be more safe. They don't want to walk on the middle street, too small. So all these things, and also we have the trash can, police one. They take the trash can to the grass to get a space for the parking. And I have the bicycle, I put this on, they take my bicycle, put bicycle on the grass, they park in the car there. All my neighbors say this. My neighbors say, "Oh, they take your bicycle, they throw a bicycle to the grass." So this happened, so we cannot call everything. Oh, please, they have to take my bike or car. No, but all our neighbors have been here, suffer for November until now. And before November, I tried to call them many times. But after December, after meeting, I didn't call anymore, because we just gave our concerns to bring the concern up to the meeting. We just waited for you guys can help us, you know.
I would encourage you, though, to call now, okay, because the police are very sensitive to this. This was a very important issue for everyone, okay, and I just want the teeth to be able to make any type of ordinance we do stronger.
supporting
Well-
evidence.
Well, if you say so, then I was going to keep it quiet.
And sir, just so you know, every phone call you make to the police department is on tape, so I don't know why they wouldn't be able to find it. I mean, so, I don't know what happened with that, but I'm encouraging you now. Okay, based on my conversation, and then we have the ability to put some teeth.
Mr. Woods, can I ask you a question? Is there any way that we can maybe introduce an ordinance by title tonight? I have the title of what's in our ordinance, maybe introduce it, and together we can work on an ordinance? I mean, with
That's sort of a paper dragon, and I don't know if it's necessarily, like, right now, I think we are better off given the opportunity that the police are now looking for this.
Okay.
To be able to get the ammunition and the evidence necessary to be able to make this ordinance or make whatever we do. If we have these complaints, we can go to the management and show them that maybe they have to go with valet driving, your valet parking, which is certainly something that could be
So
looked at.
tomorrow morning, I will call the Brownstone and talk to them about valet parking. In the meantime, is it possible for this council to just have a resolution tonight, just saying that there's an emergency in that street and that it's residents only?
Yeah, we are very appreciative of it because it's for yeah.
No, but there are like 12 people here. I think it's an emergency. Yes. Thank you.
Carol McMorrow, 489 Summit Street. Mayor, if I may, I have an idea. I don't know if it's going to work, and obviously, the residents would have to find it to be not more of a hindrance, and obviously to be helpful. I was around when they redid all of the parking ordinances in the town, okay? And they went street by street, and I think you came back in December, I don't remember when you came, Mr. Williams, the last time, December. And I sat at the table and I said, you need to relook at certain streets in town, and you need to change the criteria for those streets. For example, we have streets in town that only allow parking on one side of the street. Okay? That should be implemented by ordinance introduction tonight immediately to give, if that doesn't bother the residents. Now, and then you can do a second ordinance to help them after that, because you can't introduce by title. You know you're not allowed to do that if you don't have the guts of the ordinance, because it's going to get overturned. So, what you need to do, I sold 29 Clifton Terrace, and that was before the Brownstone was in. That street is narrow. You're doing three-point turns just to get out of the street, and you live there. I can't even imagine what these poor people are going through now. But if the residents are okay with parking on one side of the street, okay, then that's going to cut it in half right away for them, getting in and out of their driveways. That's something you could just introduce.
Put it on my side.
I just tried. Flip a coin. I just said, I did so, what?
You could rotate.
Listen, it could be.
You could rotate, right?
You know what? That's a great idea. It can be every other week. It's one side, this one. Whatever you want to do as a council, like New York does. New York, Monday,
side of the street parking,
yeah, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, it's the right side. Whatever, pick your days, doesn't matter to me. But that's going to help them right away until you figure out, I don't think they should be...
I think resident-only parking.
Well, but if you're doing it every other day, then it's fair that way. You do it that way. I don't think the police have to be bothered, but there's a way to, you can restrict, Mayor, the parking by ordinance saying one side Monday, Tuesday. Whereas I'm making these things.
I would like to do that tonight, and I'd
You
like to...
could do that tonight
Borough
for immediate
Council.
relief for them, but it works.
All right.
Do that on some streets have one side parking only.
Borough Council.
I needed to figure out what we could do. If you need to go and think about it, we're going to come back with something either restricted at one side or
Well, you could alternate it every other month. You could alternate it.
people saying, I want to park.
This council needs to do something for these people tonight. So, Al, don't think about it. Yes, sir, in the back. Oh, I'm sorry, yeah.
Hi, good evening. Sharon Banks, 12 Clifton Terrace. Just to speak to the calling the
I'm
police...
sorry. Sir, you'll be next, okay? I didn't realize she was coming up.
Thank you. Speaking to calling the police station, I called on Sunday, and they said that they were going to come by. It was about an hour and 15 minutes. When I spoke to the police officer, what he said was, we're shorthanded, we're down eight police officers, and we don't have the staff to come around, because what I said to him is that I noticed that there were 3 cars that had already exceeded the 1-hour parking.
That was a Sunday?
That was this past Sunday. And I called just as they were parking, and I called again. And then he came, but he said, well, I can't take your word for it that they were parked there for over an hour. So it's still, so yes, I called myself, and they're short-staffed, 8 down, and this is the best that they could do. So what he said to me was, he suggested that we continue to come to the council meetings and to complain.
Which is the right thing to do, to be honest.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
One of the things about the parking is...
Can you state your name?
Lawrence Grant, 15 Clifton Terrace.
Thank you. What was
One
your
of the
name?
things about the parking is that the problem is usually concentrated on the weekends. And so, Fridays or holidays. And so, I heard some wonderful suggestions, one of which was maybe alternate side of the street parking, but typically, the way that works is it works throughout the week. So it's a solution that doesn't solve the specific problem. Now, whatever is done, one of the key things to take into consideration is that us residents, we park our cars in our driveways. Because it isn't a through street, cars have to U-turn. And so if a resident have their car in the driveway, and it's a 2-car garage, there's a space there. What happens is they then U-turn into that open space, putting the person's parked car in jeopardy of being hit. And that way you would never know if somebody hit your car if you didn't see it happen at the moment. So it's not only the issue of parking, it's the issue of just movement of the cars in and out the street. Now, to put it in perspective, you're looking at probably having over 100 cars on a Saturday traversing through that street. So you're looking at over 100 U-turns when before November there were no U-turns. Now, there are also children living in the street. Now, one has to be conscious about the kids coming outside, because with cars U-turning, and again, it's a very narrow street. It then becomes hazardous for the kids to be outside, or even going to put the garbage outside because you have this traffic. So ultimately, the solution should include residents-only parking, and it can't be time-based where it allows others from outside to come in and park, because one of the problems is enforcement. I sympathize with the police department, because if you're calling 911, typically you're calling for an emergency. Now, you can imagine if you're calling for parking and you're competing with emergency calls, they have limited resources. Where they're going to put those resources? So, I think in summary, what we're talking about is resident-only parking, parking that doesn't allow for a time frame such that the police department would then have to check times to try to enforce the parking. And a great suggestion was the valet parking, because then that goes to the heart of the problem, which is the business. The cars are coming because they're going to the business. So if it's managed that way, and also with parking, I think the problem is. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
Yogesh Tiwari, 17 Clifton Terrace, Englewood Place. We came here in December also, and we addressed all our serious concerns. This Sunday, there were at least 13 cars in between Palisade Avenue and Clifton Terrace till 17 Clifton Terrace. I personally called the police department. They said the cop would come and he already marked. I saw the cop, I'm not gonna lie, in the morning, around 9:30 and 10, he marked some of the cars. But then I did not see the cop for next 2.5 to 3 hours. And there were 2 cars which were parked in front of my house for more than 3 hours. I know the police are short-handed. Unless or until the cop is there round the clock, like for 8 hours, just taking care of the street, then the 1 hour parking may work. So I don't think so the 1 hour parking is a good idea. The other thing is, it's a residential street. Brownstone should be told that's a commercial. Commercial place should not use the residential street. We have the kids, we have the elderly people, we have all kinds of mixed people living on that street. And my house is being robbed in the past. So now with all these strangers, they're coming and parking their car in front of the house. Who knows that my house is gonna be robbed again, or somebody else's house is gonna be robbed again. And it's a very serious issue. And this thing becomes worse on Saturdays and Sundays.
Right.
Thanks.
Thank you. Yes.
Andrew Nicka, 54 Elm Street. I feel bad for Earl the Pearl over here, my buddy. The problem with legislating a parking ban is that the damage is already done. The cars are parked, and the worst they can get is a ticket. And meanwhile, the residents of Clifton Terrace are still stuck with a car in front of it, and if the police have enough people, they may or may not get a ticket. I think the first thing that needs to be done is the OIC, as well as the borough administrator, maybe, some of the politicians, can go to the Brownstone management and let them know they have a problem. I don't think they'd have very many customers continuing to attend their, patronize their facility, is if every time they went, they got a $100 or $200 parking ticket. So I think the first thing that needs to be done is, in order to solve these residents' problems, is that the Brownstone needs to find a way to place these cars somewhere. Now, I believe the problem happens mostly on Saturday and Sunday mornings and probably Saturday night. Yeah, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. I mean, there are office buildings to the left and to the right across the street that have ample parking, and in the past, 150 Sylvan, when there was Bally's there before, they originally had the problem where people were parking on the residential streets. Exactly the same thing. And what they did is they came to an agreement with the office building across the street, whereas they would allow their patrons to park there. It worked out being beneficial because the offices emptied out at 5 o'clock and the gym became busy at 5 o'clock. So I think before you guys legislate anything, is a real effort should be made to contact the management and let them know there's a problem. Our police officers do a great job, but to be honest with you, on a Sunday morning, they probably have only 2 cars on the road, and if there's an alarm, a medical emergency, an accident or something like that, they're not going to be able to spare somebody to go to Clifton Terrace and write parking tickets. And I think it's unfair to the residents to set an expectation that the police will be able to do something when, in reality, it's very tough for them. Unfortunately, a parking complaint is probably very low on the priority. I don't mean to disparage the police department, but I think the real way of solving this is to talk to Brownstone and emphasize, hey, if you want to have customers there that don't get tickets, fix your parking problem. I hate legislating a problem when you can just solve the problem with the ownership. Thank you.
Yes.
Huh? They haven't told.
May I cut through this way?
Yeah.
I don't want to disturb you.
I didn't know anyone could do that. Like...
Dave DiGregorio, 165 Charlotte Place. Mr. Mayor, while you're at it, contacting the Brownstone, or whoever contacts the Brownstone, first of all, I feel that everyone on Clifton Terrace should have at least one free meal at the Brownstone. That's the least that the owners can do. The second thing is, certainly, I don't know if it's legal or not, but if I were living right at the end, I'd probably be the most popular person on the street because I'd put a sawhorse up at the end to prevent people from coming down the street and parking. And then people that want to leave would have to get out of their car.
Can't do self-help.
I know you can't do it, but I would do it and probably get in trouble for it.
Cover your ears.
And the third thing is, it bothers me no end to hear that we are short of police officers in this town. I really think that this is a safety issue. I heard through the grapevine that there were 2 thefts on Charlotte Place, the street that I live on. So I really think that it's incumbent on the council to, number one, solve this problem, and let's hire some more police officers that are going to keep us safe, and there should be no question about having a lack of safety officers available on a Sunday. That's my opinion. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope that the council will take advantage of this moment to solve these relatively simple problems that I hear. Thank you.
Anybody else? We have, okay, yes.
Tony Moore, President 26 John. Sorry to bother you guys, but when you're looking at streets, John Street. The only thing I would like on John Street, if possible, limit the trucks. We have cars parking, but now we have huge trucks again parking. I get UPS trucks right and left, and they block. This is not the first time.
I'll ask Officer in Charge Hill. Chief Chaffee said you can't do that, so I'll ask Officer. You can't limit, well, especially UPS, because they're delivering to your neighbors.
No. They eat sandwiches in their truck, parked on my block.
Oh.
And they're delivering to your neighbors.
No, they're not delivering to my neighbor's house,
FedEx?
because I have pictures of it.
Okay.
Okay?
I will ask
Same thing
Officer Hill.
that Chief Chaffee, ex-Chief Chaffee saw when I pointed out a trailer truck from Coca-Cola eating lunch and not delivering. So all I'm saying is, if there's a delivery, nobody says a truck can't come on the block. But no truck, commercial, should be parked on the block. Now, I'm not saying cars, because cars come in and out, and I know I'm talking
So now
to...
I know, I hear you, but we're straying from Clifton Terrace, we're heading south. So this is supposed to be...
Well, Englewood Cliffs has a problem,
Right,
and
but
that's your problem.
the public portion here is for Clifton Terrace. I hear what you're saying.
I'm so sorry. Okay. We'll bring it up later.
Yeah, okay. Anybody else? Yes.
Aaron Geiger, 270 Alfred. I agree with Mary that the idea of having something extra for the Clifton Terrace residents who park there on their house, would be a good idea. I also have found in another jurisdiction that I'm familiar with that parking, when they mark tires, they make it in the zone. It's not just in the spot. And cars get ticketed if they stay in the zone for more than 1 hour. You can't move across the street, you can't move to the next block, you have to be, and they just ticket you. If you've had a mark on your tire, and 1 hour later you were within 5 blocks of that area, you're ticketed. And it works. There are just lots of things, but I think you have to start with approaching the brownstone, because the brownstone holds the key to solving the problem really quickly. And I think that whether it's the mayor himself doing this, or a council representative, or both together, some approach has to be made to the brownstone first and quickly to try and remedy the problem. It's in their interest to have happy customers and to have residents happy with them being in our town.
Anybody else? Yeah.
Maria Valari, 45 Jane Drive. I wasn't going to speak about this, but after listening to everything, I think you should put something in right away to start to alleviate the problem, maybe the opposite side parking, just to start, so that it alleviates some of the traffic. But the other thing is, instead of marking tires, why aren't we just putting a boot on the tire? And guess what? They're going to have to call somebody and get somebody to come there and pay a lot of money. That's what they do in all the other towns, in Hoboken and Weehawken, in Jersey City. This is what they're doing. Because then, you know what? When you realize that you're going to get a boot on your tire and it's going to cost you $225 just to get somebody to come and remove it, that might solve the problem. Thank you.
Anybody else? We have a rule, is one time. Anybody else? Okay, can I have a motion to close the public portion?
Second.
All in favor?
Point of order, Mayor?
Sorry, who moved it?
Councilman DeVarsa.
Yeah, so I think the borough clerk had something to propose.
I wanted to make a motion, actually. I asked you for a point of order.
Oh, okay. Do you want to hear what she has to say first, or?
No, I'd like to make a motion to introduce the ordinance by title tonight for residential parking only by permit on Clifton Terrace. Do I have a second?
Yeah, and I can read that. Okay,
All right,
so,
so she's got something.
O and Aversa seconded? Okay, so let me read what I have. It's going to be ordinance 1905, an ordinance amending Chapter 3, Section 3-12, entitled Resident and Visitor Parking on certain designated public streets, specifically Section 3-12.2 and Section 3-12.7 of the revised general ordinances of the Borough of Englewood Cliffs, County of Bergen, State of New Jersey. Be it ordained by the Mayor and Council of the Borough of Englewood Cliffs that Chapter 3, Section 3-12 shall be amended to include the following, and it talks about residential permit parking only, so hopefully everyone has the stickers on their cars to show that you're a resident. That's part one. And then the important part is 3-12.7, streets designated for restricted parking. We'll be adding Clifton Terrace on both sides. Be it further ordained that this ordinance shall become effective upon the adoption and publication in accordance with law. Be it further ordained that all ordinances or parts of this ordinance of the borough which are inconsistent with the provisions of this chapter are hereby repealed to the extent of such inconsistency. And be it further ordained, should any part of this provision of this ordinance be held unconstitutional or invalid, such decision shall not affect the validity of this ordinance as a whole or in any part thereof, other than the part held so unconstitutional or invalid. This ordinance shall take effect upon final adoption and publication according to law.
Members of council, are you okay with that?
Yeah.
All right, let's have a roll call.
Okay? Ordinance 1905, Councilpersons Wu,
Yes.
Song,
Yes.
Sabari,
Yes.
Park,
Yes.
Aversa,
Yes.
O.
Yes.
Okay, so it passes introduction. The way this works for the public is that ordinance got introduced just now, and then probably at our next regular meeting, there'll be a public hearing and an up or down vote on it, so it won't be effective until after that meeting if it passes and it's published. Unless...
should advise the restaurant of what's happening.
But I am still going to reach out tomorrow with the valet idea as well, so hopefully we'll get both things, all right? I thank the residents for coming here.
Mandatory valet.
Got it.
That are in homes.
What about the free meal?
Free meal. No problem. Mandatory, like they do in Edgewater. Valet parking, they got all areas to park in, they park the cars for them. That's the end of it.
Okay, we had two items of correspondence. One I mentioned already is the Office of Concerned Food Pantry. They thanked us for our contributions, and I thank everyone who brought food again here tonight. The second item of correspondence was from New Jersey Department of Transportation regarding LG corporate headquarters. And so now we're up to the next part of our agenda. Next part of our agenda is the approval of minutes from the special meeting of January 10th, 2019, and the caucus and regular January 15th, 2019 meeting.
Can I have a motion, please?
Second.
Is that for both?
All three.
All three? Yeah, all right.
If you have to recuse on one, let me know. Councilpersons Wu,
Yes.
Song,
Yes.
Sabari,
Yes.
Park,
Yes.
Aversa,
Yes.
Oh.
Yes.
All right, so they all passed. I just want to mention to our citizens also that people have been asking me what has happened with the Borough Council Democratic majority, what's happened since January 3rd, 2019, and I just could recap it all for you. Number one, they did not reappoint any of the professionals that I proposed for reappointment. These are all people and entities in full compliance with the strict no-pay-to-play ordinance that the 2018 Borough governing body put in place. The second thing was at the January 3rd reorg meeting, the Democratic Council majority, what I believe unlawfully terminated the Borough Administrator, James Barbario, from his employment and did not let him hold over for 30 days for a smooth transition. There was no transition, and that resulted in more expenses to the Borough. For example, the building on Hudson Terrace that was purchased at the end of December was not properly safeguarded. Heat was turned off, but water was left on, resulting in frozen pipes and flooding. The third thing that I would point out to the public is that at the January 3rd reorg meeting, the Democratic majority unlawfully and degradingly terminated our borough attorney, Amory Rizzuto, on the spot. Their action caused further lawsuits against the borough. At the January 3rd reorg meeting, they appointed Al Wunsch, sitting next to me, as acting borough attorney, despite the fact that he is conflicted for having represented Captain Brian Murphy until literally minutes before being appointed acting borough attorney. An important point, Wunsch is referenced in the surreptitious Chaffee recordings as someone Chaffee would work with to extort me into stepping down as mayor. Nonsense. They excluded me from all meaningful settlement discussions with the PBA, then Chief Chaffee, Boswell Engineering on the Morrow Road issue, and the affordable housing litigation. In fact, it's clear from the record that Mr. Wunsch went to the settlement meetings with Normandy Development before he was authorized to do so. The PBA lawsuit for improperly using the ECPD, Englewood Cliffs Police Department, police insignia in election campaigning was settled by Mr. Wunsch, despite Mr. Wunsch's enormous conflict of interest from representing at least one member of the PBA. Conflicts do not seem to matter to you, Mr. Wunsch. The lawsuits by Chief Chaffee were also settled so that Chaffee would never have to account for his insubordination, the surreptitious recordings he made, or for the death threats he made, the sexually harassing language that he used, Captain Murphy's racist speech that he participated in, Captain Regan's racist comments, or for targeting of me, and for the overtime abuse and fraudulent government overtime records that he orchestrated. As far as I know, because I am not told very much by these people, Chaffee continues to be president of the Volunteer Fire Department. Think about that. And Gloria O's and her compatriots up here rushed to repeal my 2018 no-pay-to-play ordinance. They did not do that correctly either. I vetoed it, and then they reintroduced it materially the same, so they could award their friends with your money. I will veto it again because it still fails as a viable piece of legislation. The lawsuit against Boswell Engineering, which the doctor was here speaking about earlier, over the failed Morrow Road stormwater control project was settled, even though Mazer Consulting, the borough engineer, the engineer's report they were using was flawed. If redoing the Morrow Road stormwater control project costs more than $185,000, which it will, they received, Englewood Cliffs taxpayer will be forced to pay the difference of about $160,000. Stephen Boswell, the president and CEO of Boswell Engineering, sits on the board of directors of Connect One Bank with former Mayor Joe Parisi. You could yawn all you want, but this is going to keep me up. Think about that. What a conflict. It is unclear if Council President O is still receiving legal work from Connect One Bank. At our special meeting this past Monday, I went into great detail on the Democratic Council majority's exclusion of me since January 3rd from the affordable housing litigation process and their rancid settlement posture. My mayor's ad hoc committee on affordable housing was excluded from everything. They own it, even though the Democrats were required by resolution to include my committee. Finally, actually not finally, there's one more. They have tried to remove my statutory power as mayor and transferred those powers to Gloria O. They are ignoring state law and trying to grab powers reserved for the mayor. I am presently in court bringing this to a judge's attention. All the energy the Democratic Council majority uses to fight with me should have been put towards working with something good for the borough and standing their ground with Fair Share Housing Center, Normandy Development, the PBA, Chief Chaffee, and Boswell Engineering. They wave the white flag of surrender and then throw the green flag of your money at their friends. Based on rumors I am hearing, there will be more wrongdoings to inform you of in March. Thank you. I'm glad you agree.
And you would be expecting the same
I'm glad you agree.
statement by email
I'm glad you agree.
on the Bolstein.
I'm glad you agree. No dime. Nope, it's what I read here, it's what I wanted. I want the public to hear everything. Okay, so next up...
your side of it, Mayor.
So on the issue of adoption of bylaws, I did have a couple questions, because, under New Jersey law 4860-5, I have the right to preside over all meetings. Presiding means presiding. I run the meetings, I decide who sits where.
This is with the judge now, isn't it?
Section 1 is
This is with the
basically...
judge now. We don't agree on this.
Well, you're
This
trying to
is with
adopt
the
them,
judge.
well, you're trying to adopt them tonight, so I want to point
You
out...
are going to adopt them tonight.
Well, you're trying to, you're out of order.
You don't run this meeting. You're
So,
there now.
I would say that Article 2, Section 1
I'm sorry, Mayor.
is violating my rights.
Tonight.
Section 2 is violating my rights. Section 4 is violating my rights under 4860-5, A through H.
Okay.
And then also, there's more. Section 11 is violating my rights under the same statute. Article 5, Section 2 is also violating my rights. And Article 6, Section 8 as well, Section 9. Finally, it looks like they're trying to adopt this tonight. I feel badly for the public, because that's not what the law says, so we're going to have to deal with this. It looks a lot like an ordinance. They tried to introduce it, I guess, back at the reorg meeting. It requires 2 meetings to do that. So that said, I'm going to ask the council to work with me to get this to a point where we could all agree on it, or we'll continue to fight over it. So what do you want to do?
We're going to pass it tonight.
You're going to pass the ordinance tonight, Ellen?
Yes,
Okay.
we are.
I don't know if the public heard this, but Councilwoman Park said they're going to pass the ordinance tonight. Okay.
Yeah, we are.
So I just made a motion to...
And I second it. And we did make the changes.
Second that.
We did, no, Mayor started already, so
There's
a motion and a second.
You know what, I'm sorry, I didn't follow the agenda, so I said what I had to say about the bylaws.
No, you don't do that, Mayor. You don't get to do that. There's a motion and a
I
second.
call for a vote.
I'm sorry, who motion?
I made the motion.
Aversa and,
The agenda says...
excuse me, Mary, you're out of order. You are out of order. You don't have the floor.
Whoa, stop
You do not have
yelling.
the
You know what,
floor.
folks?
We have a motion and a... Excuse me. No,
hold
you
on.
don't get it. You're not on the council anymore. Excuse me.
So the bylaws as
Sorry.
read require me to follow the agenda as
No,
read,
no.
and I made a mistake.
No.
So we need to do the public portion. We need to do the public portion. I want to correct my mistake. We should have followed the... All right, well then anything that happens in the meeting from here on is tainted. Anything from here on is tainted.
It's in the bylaws. You know what?
No.
Okay. Councilman Saab?
Yes.
Councilperson Savari?
Yes.
Park?
Yes.
Aversa?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
Okay, can I have a motion to open to the public?
So moved.
So moved.
All in favor? Aye. Okay.
Yep.
Yes.
I just wish that the public would respect the 5-minute rule that's just been adopted by the new bylaws. Please don't make us make a big stink like you did last week.
I view that as an unconstitutional, hold on, wait, don't start the clock yet. I view that as an unconstitutional restraint on trade, on
You've
free
done it 4
speech.
times.
However, I am delighted that after 8 years on council, Councilman Aversa finally found something productive to do at a meeting, which is to watch his iPhone and time everybody.
There you go. See?
Mayor, if it's so unconstitutional, how were you able to do it 4 times in the past?
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, you want me to...
I never did.
4 days? You
you
never
did.
did?
Yes, you
I
did.
have copies of the
I
minutes.
said to try to stay to 5.
No,
I never
no,
limited.
no, no,
I
no,
never
no, no,
time
no,
people.
no.
Never time
4
people.
times.
I thought you were black and white, not gray.
Never time people.
There you go.
Never time people.
You're lying again.
Oh, will you relax? Why have you been upset all week? We had a meeting on Monday, and you're going crazy on Monday. You insulted my wife on Monday, and now you look at you
I
tonight.
insulted your wife?
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yes, you did.
It's okay, you have 5 minutes.
Gloria,
Supposed to be right down here.
Mike?
can we let the residents speak?
You don't have the right to talk.
Okay, Nancy.
You don't have the floor. You have no rights.
All right.
Can we let the residents speak?
All right. All right.
You have
All
5
right.
minutes.
Just,
You don't know what you're talking about.
well, we all saw that, Gloria.
Okay.
It's clear.
Okay. Name
All right.
and address?
I'm waiting for everyone.
Wait, let me see your clock. So when you're
Right here.
Oh, look at that. Ed Aversa, the timekeeper.
I came to the Borough Hall today
Somebody has to run a
to get a copy of the bylaws.
they're here, Mary.
May I have a copy? You said I'd get them at the meeting?
I'm not deaf, you don't have to yell at me.
Well, why are
No,
they here? They should be
I'm
up
not
there.
yelling. I'm not
I
yelling,
mean,
I'm just talking.
I think it's unfair to the public that we didn't have it.
I would have had them before they voted on them. Thank you. Okay. The next thing is, when I was on the council on November 8th, the council voted on Resolution 18250, which was accepting and modifying the hearing officer's recommendations as to insubordination disciplinary charges against Michael Chiaffi, dated November 20th, 2017. That resolution passed, and Michael Chiaffi was penalized 2 days for every day of insubordination. And that was modified from the hearing officer's recommendation of 90 days for every day of insubordination. So 340 days, 348 days times 2 is 692 days. If you take an average 30 days in a month, that's 23.2 months. At his salary of December 17th, 2017, of $19,127.42 per month, that equals $443,756.14. That motion was passed by the council, although it was a 3-3 and the mayor cast the deciding vote. Democrats voted no, the Republicans, William Will, Mark Clark, and I voted yes. That money was to have been debited from Chief Chiaffi's accrued monies banked for sick time and everything else. And I want to know if this council now, with their settlement, have overruled. This was a legitimate vote of the council, and that money should not have been reinstated to him. It was taken away. It was taken away, and it should not have been reinstated. Now, I did request copies of his settlement agreement, and I did request a copy of the Boswell settlement agreement, and I was advised that neither of those were available to the public as they were not signed. I want to know why they're not signed, and I want to know when they will be available to the public. The public has a right to know what you are giving away, and that $443,000 plus dollars, because that's a year old on the salary, should not have been included in his settlement.
So actually, the official record of Chief Chaffee's vacation and time accrued reflected as of December that it was all eliminated from that official government record, which is the journal entry that our accounting department keeps. So I'm actually curious as well what's happened here.
Right. When will the details be available to the public? This has been a month already that you have approved it, and I want to know when the public will be allowed transparency to see what you all did.
Anybody on the council that wants to answer that question? Very quiet, very quiet.
Asking you, Mayor, I thought you had all the answers.
Very quiet. No, I don't throw money away the way you guys do.
You just paid the lawyers.
And remember, you all wave the white flag of surrender, but you throw the green flag of the taxpayers' money at
So
your
I can
friends.
assume that that money stayed out of his hands, because it was never reinstated back. Thank you.
Well, that's the answer.
No answers? No answers. No answers.
Well, let's be clear.
So much for transparency.
Councilman Wu, can you answer that?
No, I am not aware.
Because you've been excluded, right?
I've been excluded, correct.
Councilman Song, can you answer that? Councilwoman Sabari, can you answer that?
No, I'm sure it's getting signed.
Councilwoman Park, can you answer that?
What was the question?
Mayor, I think it's the police committee.
What were you asking me?
Whether or not the money has been paid over to Chief Chaffee that you guys are settling with.
Whether the money has been paid out? I don't think so.
Councilman Aversa?
I don't think it's been paid out.
Yeah.
Councilwoman No, nothing's been paid,
Yeah.
okay?
Is it included in his settlement? Is it included in his settlement?
His settlement does say how many days he will be paid for.
Is that...
So if he had accumulated sick time and vacation pay over his 30 years of employment, it probably is in our settlement agreement that he get paid.
Well, there's also the insubordination and vacation
That money was taken away,
pay.
so...
It was taken away.
Settlement made.
Well, I guess what they're saying, Mrs. O'Shea, is that they gave it back to him.
No, that's not true.
Some money was taken away.
Some money was taken away.
Amount.
Well, was it more or less than 500,000?
Yeah, 90 days worth were taken away from him.
And so he's getting how much then?
That resolution was for 2 days for every day of insubordination.
Right, so that would have been
48 days
There's a
times
problem with the
2.
resolution.
No, there was no problem with the resolution. It was duly voted upon as such.
Look, this is what happened, and just remember what I read about what's happened since January 3rd, and
Right,
the-
he sued...
yeah. Anybody else wishing to be heard?
If I could address the issue, okay?
He can't hear you.
What ended up happening was this. The mayor's vote on that tie was tainted when he filed a lawsuit against Chaffee personally, without telling anyone on the council. Mr. Wu, he didn't tell him.
It was after
He didn't
the
tell
fact.
anyone down.
Punitive damages.
It was after the fact.
He went after him for punitive, he went after him for compensatory, and he went after him for legal fees. When he did that, okay, it caused us to have a huge problem.
Your timeline is messed up. Your timeline is messed
December
up.
18th, he filed the lawsuit. December 18th.
Yeah, the vote happened before that. The vote happened before that.
December 18th.
No. You're playing games with the public
He filed the
again.
lawsuit. No.
You're playing games because that happened after.
That's okay.
That happened after. And quite frankly, what he's trying to say is that they're throwing money at someone who should not have your
I'm
money.
sorry, I can't answer your question.
You're talking about transparency, but he won't let you...
No, because you're lying again. You're lying again, okay? After. And the reason, just so everybody knows, is that I did sue him because he targeted me.
Okay.
All right? He targeted me.
This is the personal conflict on the...
And I waited long enough, but that was after the fact. That was after the fact. And Mr. Wunsch, I have to remind you that you have no authority. You're an attorney.
I was asked.
Act like an attorney. Be professional. I'm the mayor here.
To the public, let's run the meeting the right way, please, and you wonder why I have to jump in? This is why.
Look at that, the timekeeper. Here we
Anyone
go.
else from the public wish to be heard?
Anybody else? No, I didn't recognize you. I recognized him. You guys want to come up together? You can have 6 minutes.
No, you can't come up together. You can't come up together.
Who's the tenor and who's the bass?
Once again, Dave DiGregorio,
No sharing of time, just so you know, so...
165 Charlotte Place.
Just let you know.
Am I on?
Yes.
Okay. With all due respect, Mr. Mayor, you have nobody to blame but yourself. You got yourself into this. Leadership is,
I made the chief target?
excuse me, my time. My time, not yours.
Go ahead.
You were elected. I had great hopes that you were going to reach across the aisle and establish trust. You have established zero trust with anyone. What you're getting now is what you basically deserve. And what you needed to do, and it's too late now, is to be a really completely decent human being and see everyone in this town as a human being. Not as people that don't deserve to live here because it's the wrong party. Leadership is establishing trust across the aisle. Leadership is doing what's good for the people. Leadership is not taking down signs, moving commemorative stones around.
I took down my parking
Leadership is not standing at a podium that's a little higher than everyone, which is a little bit of a switch, which shows your insecurity as a human being, which makes you a failed leader.
I assure you that
Excuse me, my time.
I'm sure he's going to stop.
My time. Now, I would like to hear, excuse me.
What would you like to hear?
Please keep it...
Can you ask your wife to stop talking from the audience, please?
What would you like to hear?
And it's very,
I don't believe in
it's also
timing.
peculiar, because those people, when I called out, I was kicked out.
No, you were kicked out after 3 warnings, usually.
When I was called out, I was kicked out. Simple. Okay, not that I want anyone to be kicked out, I really don't want anyone to be kicked out. And I think we have a big boy up there that can speak for himself when it's his turn. Now, I still haven't heard a complete explanation, and I'd like to hear it about tomorrow, and I'd like to hear Mr. Wunsch's full explanation of that issue, because it does concern.
Yeah, I would like that also, because he hasn't told me yet either.
And I would like you not to interrupt him.
Well, I can do whatever I want up here, but that's okay. Go ahead.
That's again another problem.
Yeah.
That's a problem.
Yeah, well, you know what? You know what the real problem is? He negotiated that in the darkness of night, excluded me, and the residents still have the same problem.
Well, again, it comes all back to trust. And if you would have led...
I don't trust him.
If you would have led in the very beginning with a spirit of trust, with a spirit of looking at the borough administrator at the time, and trusting and forging trusting relationships, you failed to do that. You cost the town a ton of money and a potential of 600 units of extra housing. It's been a disaster. An absolute disaster.
It's been tremendously successful, because the public finally knows what goes on in this town, like it or not.
Not true.
Like it or not.
Thank you. And a million eight.
Like it or not. How's the quality of your life?
Glenn Luciano, 20 Laurie Drive. I have to say I'm a little disappointed, Mr. Mayor, that you asked everybody on the council a question, and when Mr. Wunsch tried to explain it, even though you didn't give us an answer, you tell us that he's lying. If you had the answer...
He's not on council.
Let me finish.
He's not on council.
Doesn't matter.
He's not on council.
Doesn't matter.
He's a lawyer.
It doesn't matter.
He speaks when he's spoken to.
Finish, Mayor. What's wrong with you?
Can you restart my time, please? I reclaim my time.
Yes. Give him an extra 10 seconds.
I'm telling you that I feel a little disappointed that if you have the answer, please, you can talk all you want when I'm done. You should give us the answer. Don't let someone start to speak and then interrupt them and tell them they're not telling the truth. Here we go. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Good.
Well, when I hear somebody lying from the dais, I have to jump in.
How is he lying if you don't have the answer?
I heard what he said.
Okay.
About me.
Second of all, you give a chronological order of what's taken place since January. It's my understanding that last year we had a police officer that had a hearing, that was found guilty, that was assessed a penalty, and that the majority last year overruled that penalty. I'd like a chronological order of what's taken place with that police officer, Is he still a captain? Is he still being paid? Why don't you please give us, because to me, that impacts me more than what's taken place since January.
That's a good question.
So I would like to know, and I'd like to have a chronological order of what took place when the police officer had the hearing, and you should tell the public so we're transparent about it. What happened, what the council did, how much money was given to the police officer when we rescinded or overruled, which you have the right to do as a council, but that was last year's majority. And now I'd like to know how much he's still being paid. I asked a question about the police bylaws last year, or their organizational chart, where we have 2 captains, but in reality, we have 3 captains. So why don't you give us chronological order about that information? Because you know what? That hits me in the pocket more than anything possibly that happened since January. And as far as what happened with McMorrow, when I heard people saying, maybe yourself, that maybe former council people, that talked about how we were going to be exposed to legal fees if we settle with the former chief. Is it true that the former chief did not pass his legal fees on in the settlement to the municipality? And how much was that worth that we could have been exposed to that should really offset the amount of any settlement that we had? So if we talk about 400,000 or days or whatever it was,
700.
how much was, because I heard $500,000 in legal fees. So if it was $500,000 in legal fees, we were in the plus $500,000 by not having to pay his legal fees. So if we settled for him, someone mentioned 150, I believe you said 160,000 more than that. Don't hold me to numbers, but if it was 200, we had $300,000 to play with before it would have impacted anything, because we didn't have to pay his legal fees. So please give us a chronological order.
You wouldn't have had to pay his legal fees anyway, and qualitatively, what this council did was they let a police chief who recorded himself, no one recorded him, he did it himself, engaging in racist speech, sexually harassing speech.
I know. With all due respect,
Right, but you don't care about that, right? You don't care about the quality of...
Tell me what I care about.
Well, you're not mentioning it.
You know what I care
Let me
about
ask you
right
something.
now?
Are you against racism?
This is what you ask every time. Yes, here's an answer for you. Yes, I'm against racism.
All right, so why is it okay for a police chief to speak that way with his... He's on tape. He's on tape. You can listen
Hold
to
my
it.
time up, please, because
Your time is over.
This is a dialogue that I don't want to be counted against.
He's been going on. What do you got?
Oh, I always go on. I'm the one that always goes on. But
You got a
please-
minute.
Please give us a chronological order
Yeah, have
of
a
what
seat, I'll
took
tell you.
place, and tell us how much, I don't know the police officer's name, but how much that has cost us from the time that
Well, if
last
you don't
year...
know the name, I'm not sure who you're talking about.
We could play that game.
All right, so here,
Everyone knows their name but you. That's what
there's a lot of
you and
police
me maybe
officers.
don't know the name, but that's
Let me
pretty
tell you
fun.
let me tell you what happened there.
Okay, please, I'd like to...
There was, in this very room, a kangaroo court, okay? And what happened in that court was Mura was railroaded, okay? Because if Mura actually had these tapes before he settled, that Chaffee made, it would have been abundantly clear that he was being railroaded, okay? And the hearing officer didn't know about these tapes, although Chief Chaffee knew they existed. There were other tapes.
Did the council majority know of the tapes when they overruled what the judge said should happen to Morrow?
To who?
Nobody knew.
Mira, thank you. When the council majority last year overruled the hearing officer, did they know, because everything don't go back to the tapes, unless you knew about the tapes.
I have
So
to
you
check
can't
myself. I think we
use it
did.
as an excuse that you overruled the police officer.
But also, there are very relevant facts that were kept from that hearing officer that I learned about, okay?
But you learned about after you forgave what the hearing officer did.
No, before. It was the reason for forgiving it. It was before, and we settled with him, by the way.
But he's still being paid.
I don't know, because I haven't been told anything since January 3rd.
Okay, well, when you
That's
say
it.
that, then, I mean, you should ask our chief financial officer, who should have all those answers. We shouldn't stand up there and say, I don't have those answers.
I don't have the answers.
Because you're the mayor, and you know what, as the mayor...
Yeah, well, that's all very sweet and
everything-
nice of you to say that, but let me tell you something. Since
Tell me,
January
please.
3rd, these folks up here have taken over your account and thrown your money down the garbage.
I understand
okay?
that, but that's what you keep saying, but my point being is that you have
You
the
speak
ability
as
to
if though I
find
could do
answer.
everything. Listen,
No,
I
you
am not
speak
the
as though you
CFO.
could do everything.
No, if people tell me, you like to come up here and
Yeah.
pretend that everyone's going to have answers that we don't have. Why don't you call me during the week and say, Mayor, I'd like to know this, and this, and I'll find out. But right now, the CFO's not here, okay? And it's not my job to remember every number.
No, but,
Okay, but I can tell you that people in this town, since January
and I
3rd,
think you should have the answer.
people in this town
What
have
I'm
been hurt.
disappointed in is
Yeah, I
that
know
you're
you're
disappointed.
disappointed. Sorry we disappoint you.
I'm
It's really
sorry the
bad.
way you act too, but...
It's really bad.
Thank you.
You're out of time,
But
sir. You're out of
Go
time.
check with the CFO and get your answers.
You let him go 8 minutes. 8 minutes? You let him go. You did, you No, you were interrupting him. He was interrupting him. Stop it.
I told him let him speak.
Okay, who's
No, he was asking questions there. How does that work under the timekeeper rules?
Speak, answer what he said.
Are you using FIFA rules, or what are you using? NBA, FIFA, what are you using?
Yeah, we get, what do they call it?
Residents are gonna have a kick with you on video tonight.
For the residents at home, I apologize that we have to go through this silly stuff, but it's really terrible. Most of these questions, like Mr. Luciano comes up here, he asks me these questions, he could just call during the week, but he wants to grandstand, he wants to tell me how smart he is. And they want to target people that they don't like.
I'm not asking you about Facebook, I'm asking about things...
You don't have the floor. You don't have the floor.
I don't care.
You're always here playing games. That's okay.
I play games.
I know who you are.
Anyone else?
I know who you are. I know who you are. I know who you are.
If that's not...
Mayor, you want me to pick somebody, or you want to pick somebody?
And you have a sad mistake.
No, I'll pick you.
Okay.
Tony Morpessis, 26 John. If I remember correctly, Mayor, you said you were not happy with the settlement you made with Mura,
I'm not happy with any settlement.
and that's why you rescinded it, or you don't want to pay it?
You're mixing apples and oranges.
No, I'm not.
Yeah, you are.
I'm listening to you.
No, the settlement we made was to have a no return to work covenant, and that was advised by labor attorney, that would be enforceable. It turns out it was not enforceable, but we paid for it, and I was very upset about having to settle, and it's a public number, it's $125,000. But it was valuable in a sense to the borough to have a no return to work, right? And then it's not enforceable, so I say, look, it's not fair, someone needs to kick that money back. The labor lawyer who was wrong, or Mura. Nobody did, but this council was okay with it.
Well, who's going to pay back? Don't we have to sue them to get paid
I
back?
wanted to get
It's better to keep paying the...
I wanted to get,
Better keep paying...
I wanted to get the benefit of the bargain that we struck, okay?
Sick.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Yes, sir.
This is all very interesting. I haven't been here very often. Dr. Anowska, 368 Morrow Road. There have been hundreds of thousands of dollars mentioned. May I remind you that one of the biggest projects ever conducted, building projects in Englewood Cliffs, was the $1.5 million for a project that, from the beginning, was predicted not to work.
I'm sorry, while you're speaking, he is now trying to start something with the borough authority.
I asked him to give...
Yeah, no, I heard what you said.
It was the explanation that you asked for earlier. I told him to get ready to
That's not
go.
what you said.
Can I please continue?
Please, Doctor.
So this is a $1.5 million project that was predicted to fail. Because you can calculate from the amount of water how big the pipes have to be. It was clear this will not work. There are memos to the mayor, memos to Boswell, with return receipt.
Former mayor.
Where we actually detailed the mathematics, how we calculated it. It was never challenged by Boswell. They just gave us the finger. They put the pipes in. The day the pipes were in, and there was the first rain, we had 3 flooding events. That makes one think. We videotape it. We send it to Boswell. We send it to Mirandi. And Mirandi, as the supervising engineer of the borough, also an employee for Boswell, approves, knowing that in his contract, which we got by Opera Review, which we are forced to see, defines his duty as the person who approves payment after he has reassured himself that the project works. He's got the video, 3 flooding events. The floods rushing down from 10 acres up on Sylvian Avenue into a single pipe that falls down Tony Drive 100 feet, 150 feet, and then makes a right-angle turn, such a turn. You can stand there, and we have video that shows when it rains, and there are 20 per half hour, 20 United States swimming pools coming down and make that turn. There are fountains coming out of the grass. This is what we're talking about. People now, in the beginning when this started 10 years ago, they were all in this room and they said the water broke through the basement of our house and flooded the basement. People have built little walls to separate their garages from their living quarters so that the water would stay in the garage. Do you even know what's going on? Do you care? No, I'm talking not to Democrats or Republicans, I'm talking to human beings.
Doctor,
we have a 15-inch storm drain at the end of our garden, because this is the lowest point where all the water goes that goes into our property. Think about how a community storm drain ends up in a garden. It had to be dug to another property down on Castle Drive. People in charge all the past decades knew exactly what's going on. And as I said, the neighbors were all here. They presented their experience, and they all have died down because they don't trust you. They're afraid that you do nothing, that you sell them out for $185,000. The loss of property value, these are all million-dollar homes. The loss of property value on a single property is more than your $150,000, $180,000. That's a shame.
So, Doctor,
and they're now afraid of documenting these floods, because whatever is documented, you document against yourself. You decrease the value of your property by showing that the floods are white. You can do whitewater rafting in Morrow Road at 2 o'clock in the morning. It jumps the curb. How can you even sit down with Boswell or even think about to bring these people again here to do the engineering for our community? They knew their calculations were wrong. And they wasted $1.5 million. And you still have the same problem. Whether you're Republican or Democrat, I don't care. The flood is not Republican or Democrat.
Doctor, would you like to hear what Mr. Wunsch has
So
to say about what...
let me just control the meeting. I preside over this. Let me just tell you, Doctor, the first meeting I had when I became mayor was with you and the Morrow Road residents. And...
Because it was the biggest
Right,
project.
that was the biggest problem that we had day one, okay? I met with Chief Chaffee and everything, of course, and the other matters, but the first resident meeting was with you, because I felt that this was a really important problem, because when I met you that prior October, you explained it all, and you can sit down if you want, you don't have to stand up. And so, what ended up happening was, we had everything run by our engineer, we met with your engineer, we agreed that there was a major problem from day one with that project, and a lot of money was spent, and a lot of the calculations, the water saturation coefficients were wrong, the runoff from the top parking lot was not accounted for properly, so it overcharged the system right away. And what happened was, we hired a special litigation attorney, he brought a lawsuit. We went through discovery. I remember the day I was being deposed in that litigation, it was like a 100-year storm almost out there. Yeah, we had the flood, it was like February. Yeah, and we had a video, I sent different people out to take videos, and the attorney for Boswell sitting across from me, and he says, well, so what's going on with that property? What's that street, how's it going? I said, well, it's very fortuitous that you're here today deposing me about that project, because all hell is breaking loose right now, and we're videotaping it. And he had this very worried look on. He knew he had a problem, okay? And then we had mediation, we tried to settle it. We actually, in mediation, agreed on what the fix would be. And the issue, and this is a little shake and bake from the other side, they were supposed to just do it. And then they came back and said, hey, wait a minute, we agree on the fix, but we're only going to give you $185,000. And I said, well, Andy, our engineer from Mazer Consulting, how much is it going to cost? And he said, well, it's closer to 400. I think the number is like 342 or something like that. And so that was the number. So well, I think all the bells and whistles are really closer to 4. But okay, so look, we failed in mediation. We had a trial. It should have already happened, I think, this month. At some
On
point.
the 11th.
Yeah, on the 11th.
I'm supposed to be a witness.
Right. We're going to have a trial and let a jury decide, right, who was right and who was wrong. We already knew we had this, right? And then on January 3rd, of course, we had a reorg, the Democratic majority came in, and it excluded me from the process. I don't know if they fired the litigation counsel or what, but he was no longer involved.
That's not true.
And so now...
You're not accurate.
Well, I don't know. I'll tell you. I don't know what happened after January 3rd. But what I do know... Hold on. What I do know, though, is, number one, I was excluded, and number two, I have a settlement that says $185,000 to fix a $400,000 or $342,000 project.
The attorney that the mayor hired actually agreed to this settlement, sir. And I want you to
Well, hold on a second. You don't have the floor. You're not recognized. You're not recognized. Let me finish. Yeah, you're not recognized. So look, it's $185.
You're lying,
I hope,
gentlemen.
You're
lying.
No.
You're lying.
I have the Mazer, and I'm happy to share the Mazer.
To this settlement.
I'm happy to share
Mazer and Lanza agreed
I'm
to this
happy to
settlement.
share,
They were
they didn't
hired
agree to
by
anything,
you.
you pushed them to, I'm happy to share the Mazer estimate with you, okay? I so wholeheartedly believe that this council sold you out, and I feel terribly for you
Shame on
and
you,
the rest of
Mayor.
us.
That is not true. That is not true. This is what
Well,
you
why didn't you include me then?
This is what you do.
Right?
You included.
You didn't include me, right.
Because you didn't show up to the meeting.
All right, so now let's hear from Mr. Wunsch
Since the mayor won't let
through the rose-colored glasses of Mr. Lund.
Oh, please.
Go ahead, Al.
Okay.
The doctor's been...
Doctor, first, let me state, on behalf of the council, I mean, we sympathize with your situation, of course. But when we deal with litigation, there are issues that have to go forward, and there's decisions that need to be made. During the pendency of this action, there were memos, there were things being done that were being sent exclusively to the mayor, and that the mayor was not sharing with other members of the council.
Not so.
Okay, let him finish.
In fact, the mediator who was involved with this actually questioned that, and there was a letter sent out regarding that, of which Mr. Lanza said, you don't tell me who I have to send my things to, I deal with the mayor, okay? Paraphrasing, but along those lines. Mr. Lanza is a great lawyer. okay? I worked with him with this case. He was with me when the case settled, unlike what the mayor would lead you to believe. And when we went to the mediation, okay, the final mediation...
Which I was excluded from.
Again, can I speak?
No, I was excluded from. I think the public needs to
Can I
understand
speak?
that the CEO of this town was excluded from settling your matter.
That's what we have attorneys for. Go ahead, Al.
Go ahead, Al.
I went...
Tell them how you screwed this up.
I went and I watched how this thing went forward. Now, Hippolyte did initially put the value of this case at like $2.4 million. He was laughed out of court when he put that together. He then came down...
He wasn't laughed out of
Let
court.
me finish.
He was not laughed out
The
of court.
judge laughed him out of the court.
Not true. There was no trial ever.
The mediator is a judge. Judge Toscos laughed him out. He then changed it to $300,000 approximately, okay? Their expert put it in at like $50,000, which was ridiculously low. The court required that an independent engineer with no bias, no connection to either side, take a look at it. And that independent engineer came up with a value of $188,000. Now, on the Friday that this case ended up being settled, Judge Toscos listened to everything, took a look at the engineer's report, and recommended that the case settle for $170,000. So Lanza and I took a hardline position and said, no, you know, we have to take care of this at least 185. Because Mr. Hippolyte, when questioned about the 188, said, yeah, that's in the ballpark. So our expert corroborated the expert that was the quote-unquote neutral.
I spoke with Mr. Hippolyte recently, and that's not what he said.
Well, then Mr. Lanza's lying. So that's the situation. So then Mr. Lanza, who was the chief counsel with regards to this, watched this proceeding, was with me with the proceeding, and agreed that it should be settled at 185, which was 15 more than what the judge had put on it, and was more than they wanted to pay. They didn't want to go past 125. And we settled with the consent of the council for 185. Now, I understand what you're saying, but when an independent expert, when a jury's going to hear, we're at 300, they're at 50, the independent expert's at 188, that's pretty persuasive evidence. And the scenario with regards to same is that when our expert says, well, the 300, you know, I inflated that because I thought you guys wanted to get some money on this, okay, that is going to be a problem because that's not the real number. And he went from 2.4 to 300. So let's keep that in mind. Now, it would have cost us another $60,000 to $70,000 in litigation costs to continue up to that point. Because the next step was going to be the depositions of all the experts and things along those lines. So if you take a look at how much has been spent thus far and add it, it was a zero-sum game. The settlement value was the right value that was given to us by the expert, who was the independent, picked by the judge, not picked by us, and that was the value that it was arrived at. With that, now, I am trying to...
The thing is that you need to mention also...
to me again.
Hold on a second. You also need to mention that you have to go out for RFQ.
Sorry, I'll tell you what, if you come to my office, I'll be happy to sit with you.
You have to go out to
and talk to you about
RFQ.
everything.
Listen,
I would be more than happy to sit with you and talk to you.
I don't believe a word you said because I was excluded, so I'm just telling you, you still have to go out to
I don't
RFQ.
believe a word you say because you're...
You have to go to RFQ.
I will come to your office.
I would be more than honored.
I want to know how you want to repair
That's the bottom line. Whether it's $1,
a knowingly committed,
We are committed, that's what the money's for.
let me finish, a knowingly committed engineering disaster for which $1.5 million was invested, how you want to correct this with $185,000. That's an interesting question.
Is the council...
One moment.
Is the council going to recommend...
Please let me finish.
I'm an engineer, that's why we have experts. And I said to you before, I'd be happy to talk to you.
Experts use parameters, so the question is, what are the parameters that they used? And experts make mistakes. But whatever it is, I understand, these are $185,000. Now, how are you going to use them? That's the question. So I understand you're all set, this is all done.
Well, what has to happen is we need an RFQ, right, to go out. I think the settlement should have had a specification of what needs to be done, right?
Tell me how...
No, because when I was involved, what we had agreed to was the specifications of what needed to be done, okay? And I said, well, if Boswell does it, I don't care how much it costs, this is the work that we agree on that has to be done. But then, hold on a second, let me finish. But now that it's out in the open that you're getting $185,000, I thought we had agreed on what needed to be done. You need to go out to RFQ, right? And then see what the bids are, right?
But bids for what?
For the repairs.
Which repairs? Which repairs? The pipe, let me finish, please let me finish. You have 2 or 3 elements that were never addressed in a coherent engineering plan. You have 10 acres of water impermeable surface.
What are you talking about?
When Boswell did the calculations, they repeatedly changed the parameters. They repeatedly changed the parameters of the calculations, and they ended up... Would you please listen?
I'm sorry, he is
Stop.
working on...
And Boswell ended up, instead of having the water impermeability for the collection area of the water as asphalt, they changed it down to meadow. When you look at the Boswell calculations and how it was how they picked the parameters.
Doctor, I don't want to interrupt you anymore, really. You've spoken a long time. I hear you, but I'm no help to you with all the explanations.
Okay.
I understand.
But let me make one more point. Let me make one more point.
You don't need to make a point, sir. You made your point. We understand. It's a disaster over there, and it needs to be corrected. Correct?
And I want to make a proposal how to correct it.
Okay.
So let me make my point.
Okay, but this is...
I'd like to hear it,
All you need to do is take intake limiters on the high volume intakes on top of Tony Drive, so that whatever water enters from up there where it is collected, and where you have actually built dams, so that the water that is collected in these parking areas is not overflooding the properties on Tony Drive. Put intake limiters on there whose capacity is geared to the pipe that already is in Morrow Road, so that pipe cannot be overloaded.
Makes perfect sense.
This is written in the handout. It was discussed with everybody, all the engineers. Instead of putting a second pipe in like Hippolyte wanted to do for $2.4 million, there's no guarantee that it works. Take what is there and make it work. And for $185,000, you can find a way of putting limiters on there so that the water stays up there and is slowly drained instead of overwhelming the downstream system.
What we do in our residential area with seepage pits is similar idea. You collect the water and it slowly drains out to the area.
Exactly.
I got it. I see, I get it.
So that was one of the first proposals that we wanted, was to stage the water at the top of the hill, right? So, to stage it.
Thank you, Doctor.
All right, can I have a motion to close the public portion?
Second.
Oh, there's more people? Okay.
No,
Yes.
so many hands. We'll be here past midnight.
Sorry, Jimmy.
I know, we had a chance.
I just thought it was a good idea. Almost.
Unbelievable.
I had that in mind.
Carol McLaurin, 489 Summit Street. I just have to correct the incorrections that are being stated on the record about the Morrow Road project. And for the doctor and for the other members of the audience that are listening, this is what happens when you have a new majority that wants to do everything without getting the facts through a transition process of the work that was done when they come into power. They've got the votes, they're in charge, but it is reckless and irresponsible to not get the facts, Mr. Wunsch, when you're going into a settlement. I was there from day one. Number one, you have no idea how difficult it was to find an attorney that did not have a conflict with Boswell Engineering. We searched high and low throughout the state of New Jersey and finally found Mr. Lenz. And we were grateful that we found somebody finally that didn't have a conflict. That's number one. Number two...
And he was a very good lawyer.
Yes, and he did... Ms. Sabari is gravely mistaken and making a false statement to the public, again, about her statement about what she just said about the settlement. Because let me tell you what did happen. It didn't start at 2.4, it started at 1.5, and originally it was that high because they wanted to do the whole street. I lived on Ridge Road when that piping project, that pipe was stored in front of my house along with other people there. And they undersized the pipe. I mean, I was there for every meeting. I was there in March when he gave an incredible presentation. The borough clerk should still have that meeting. I suggest everybody watches that meeting of the March 2016. I will never forget the rapids in Englewood Cliffs, okay, coming down that area. What my understanding was, the judge then narrowed the framework of where they felt the work should be done. That's why it went from 1.5 down to the lesser number. If we had it our way, we'd want to do the whole road. But what we were being geared towards was doing a piece of it. I'm sorry, the 185 is wrong, because what happened was that Mr. Hippolyte was quite clear, and it's on his attachment. I believe it's in a letter somewhere. I know Andy and I had many conversations about it. When the expert, the neutral expert, gave his testimony about 188, he did not include in that price getting rock, and redoing the street. Mr. Hippolyte's number included the rock and redoing the street, which you have to do. So you settled knowingly for $160,000 less, guys. Let me break it to you. You made a big mistake. This town is going to have to eat $160,000. And I really feel the people on council that made the mistake. Oh, you okay? You know, I mean, it's going to cost you that, because Mr. Watson, you call Mr. Hippolyte and you ask him. Yes, the 188 was that number from the engineering portion of that pipe. But to redo the street, which we shouldn't have to pay for, Boswell's miscalculations made the error. And digging rock, because that pipe has to now be laid alongside the other pipe. I'm not an engineer, but that's the only way they said it would work. There's rock there. So that's a guaranteed extra $160 that you didn't take from Boswell. They're not going to tell you that. That's your adversary. They made out on the deal.
The neutral is not my adversary, and that was the advice of trial counsel. So, and he's a good lawyer, you just said so.
But he's not an engineer. Mr. Hippolyte was precluded from that. I'm just saying, and I want to move on to my thing, you need to talk to the people that were here before you so you don't have something fall through the cracks. It was reckless. And now these poor people here are going to have to pay for this, and the residents in this town. But I feel you guys should have to chip in and pay for it because you made a mistake.
We took the advice of our attorney.
Oh, that's your excuse on a lot of things, Debbie.
Yeah, I don't think so.
You're here all of 3 days.
Lanza and Lanza.
I don't think so.
No, Lanza.
I don't think, you always do that. You cut me out, the guy was doing a real good job, and then you play games. All right.
Okay, you were here all of 3 days.
I'm sorry, Carol, please, don't pass judgment,
I'm
okay?
passing a lot of judgment.
Don't pass
and
judgment.
I'm gonna go on.
You're not up here.
She's attacking me.
Okay.
Please don't attack the resident.
You're a very bitter...
You just said that I should be paying for this.
I do.
Okay, and I'm telling you, I took the advice of your counsel, who your counsel...
You love doing that, don't you? You cut me out, then all of a sudden
And
it's...
everybody else.
Yeah, go ahead, you're responsible. You own
You
it.
all play your game, Mayor.
You own it.
Ms. Sabari was wrong, and she's going to be admitting it.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, I think you will.
Mayor, if I may.
Here we
Ms.
go.
Sabari and Mr. Song, when they ran, I just want to read this into the...
Time, Mrs. McMorro, thank you very much.
No, my time is up.
It is up.
It is not.
It was 5 minutes.
You're like not consistent, Ed.
Nope.
As a timekeeper, people are up there 10 minutes, 12 minutes.
Stop whining, we have...
I don't whine, I just tell you the way it is.
Thank you very much. I got 5 minutes too.
No, you got more than 5.
Really? Come on, Carol, please be respectful. You do it at the planning board, and people are very respectful.
Let her finish.
You never read. You always say you're going to keep reading my script, and you go off on a tangent.
Councilman Aversa, let other people speak longer, just let her finish.
I didn't let
Because we're going to spend more time arguing about this than just letting her finish.
We have to be fair to everyone else.
You're not fair to anyone, Mrs. Zoll.
We have to be fair. So, your time's up.
My time is not up.
Time's up.
It's
My
up.
time is not up.
It is up. That's up.
We had 2 people time you, and your time's
You
up.
lied at the last meeting. I was under 3 minutes, and you repeatedly said I was over 3, and you lied about missing Eastwood also. So please
But
stop.
let me ask you a question.
Mr. Wunsch,
Are you actually going to read a statement, or are you going to keep going? How long is the statement? If I give you 30 seconds, is that...
I want to. Mr. Wunsch, you know what? Listen, you're
I'm asking you,
making
Carol.
statements about Morrow Road that I have an obligation as a former council person to tell the people...
You don't have any obligation.
Who's sitting
We
here.
appreciate
That's
that.
my obligation, okay?
My obligation is to take the advice of Trump.
Talk to him afterwards, Carol. All right. Carol, it's already 10:35. We have to go on. Come on. You had your time.
Let her finish.
No, it's 10:35. We have other people that want to speak. We have other people in the audience that want to speak.
You let other people speak. See, if you're going to be a timekeeper, Ed, if that's your aspiration in life, you have to be fair to everybody, okay?
We are being fair. Maybe there are other people that want to speak in the audience. No.
Does anybody else wish to be heard?
We got people, see?
Councilman?
All right.
Start, Carol.
No, seriously.
I just want to bring 2 things up. On the February 1st video, on the February 1st,
This is not fair. No, this is not fair.
It's going to be stopped.
on the...
That's why the bylaws...
Well, you let other people go longer.
No, we did not.
You did,
No, we
actually.
did not.
all the time.
No.
You did.
Look, let's just do this. For everybody at home, I know this seems very immature because we have Mr. Aversa, Dr. Aversa, speak, basically timing everybody. I think it's silly. I would never limit anybody's free speech. I think you should
Yeah, you
finish.
have in the past 4 times. Yes.
Like, be consistent.
I just have 2 things to bring up. That's it. I talked about Morrow Road, I want to be courteous.
Yeah, but that was part of your time. That was part of your
You
time.
know, this is why you get sued, because you can't selectively let one person go for 10 minutes, and now you're stopping me because I'm...
You know what? If we let you go, other people may sue us. So we want to be fair,
Oh,
right?
you already let other people go.
He let them go.
No. Carol, you were up here once.
30 seconds. Don't
You have 30 seconds.
You may not like the message, but let her speak.
I have 2 points to make.
30 seconds.
Please.
Stop. On the February 1st video, Mayor, I heard Ms. Duffy say before that the tape malfunctioned, but I'd like to understand how that happened, because only myself and former Councilwoman Eastwood were cut off the tape. And what you see is, because I went back, I watch every meeting, and I was looking for that stuff, and I wasn't there. And the borough clerk says, we're coming back from recess. She says it on the tape at 6:15. And the tape ran, and then there's an abrupt stop. It's an abrupt cut in the tape at 7:25. So it wasn't that it wasn't working, it ran and it worked. And there's an abrupt stop at 7:25.
Okay.
How'd that happen?
Thank you, Mr. McMorro. I gave you almost a minute. Thank you.
I'm asking, did you call Gramco? Mayor, was Gramco called for the cameras?
I'm not in charge of cameras, recording, timekeeping. I run meetings. I rely on the borough clerk, and I rely on the borough clerk to run the recording. I rely on our timekeeper, our newfound timekeeper,
It's not like it's not a
to...
single question.
You don't listen to them, but you rely on them.
Let's do this. Tomorrow morning, call Gramco, try to recover that.
Call Gramco already.
I'm assuming that there was no call made. Tomorrow morning, please call. Was it call, did you call? All right, put it this way. If you didn't call, please, so we
No, I
can...
didn't call, then there was never anything wrong.
Right,
Okay, that's the point.
Oh, I don't know. I mean...
And by the way, page 70, I told Lizette Duffy was on closed session, okay?
Thank you. We're both going to
Yeah. This is why you have a lawsuit, okay? This is why you have one. And page 78, Al, page 78, the borough clerk is going to be made public. What she did is outrageous. She should be suspended immediately.
I have no idea what
Suspended immediately.
Why don't you enlighten us as to what page 78 says? What did I do? Enlighten us. I have nothing to hide. Enlighten us. No, I don't.
Anyone else like to come here?
I hope it was...
I'm senior accountant, he's not gonna run anything.
Katie, do you want to say anything? You look like you're just too much fun.
Katie, there's more pizza in the back if you want.
Are we coming up there, or does it matter? Okay, that's okay.
You get extra time if you stand.
Yeah, I have to tell you,
Say name and address, please.
Maria Valari, 45 Jane Drive, thank you. I have to tell you, I am so disgusted with the behavior up there that I can't, my brain is about to explode with what's going on up there. You're behaving like third grade children. I got back from a trip on Monday.
Councilwoman, no, please, the resident speaking.
Oh, she doesn't care. I got back, don't talk to me. I got back from a trip on Monday, and I didn't even know that there was a special meeting scheduled. I understand that you had it on February 11th. I wasn't able to attend since I didn't know, but the little bit that I saw on the tape, I can't believe what you people are behaving like. You are the same people that were complaining about things that were, you are 1,000 times worse than anything that went on before. I'm wondering why all these special meetings all of a sudden. Why a 3-minute rule, but I understand now you moved it to 5. Thank you very much. You and your supporters are outspoken and rude at every meeting that we were at when the Republicans had majority. Mayor Kranjak allowed residents to speak as long as they wanted. Yes, he did. The only time he interrupted them was when they were repeating themselves. Okay? Excuse me. It's my statement. You want to say something afterwards, it's my time. Put some time back on my thing for the comments. Okay. Obviously, you want to silence this side of the aisle. You fear what the residents may learn from the comments that are made during this public time. That can't be 5 minutes. Give me a break. It's like, okay. Miss O, I'd like an answer from you. Why you and the rest of this committee is so hell-bent on settling these lawsuits almost immediately, without even a second thought, without giving information to the residents of this town. These lawsuits that you are settling affect us, and yet the people in town, they don't know what's going on. $185,000 or $60,000 for that kind of problem? Shame on you. You should have gone to court. You should have put Boswell's feet to the fire. Okay? How can you do that? And you want this man to understand what's going on? Are you kidding me? If I were the resident, I'd sue all of you for settling that claim. Okay? And you deserve it. Also, the Chaffee lawsuit. My God! What is wrong with you people? This man taped people without them being aware that he was taping them. He taped borough employees. He taped other police officers. I'm sure he taped all of you, and I wonder what he's got on you. Okay? So what I'm worried about is that you are settling these lawsuits so quickly for no apparent reason other than wanting to clean everything up so you guys look great. as far as 800 Sylvan, you are going to settle 800 Sylvan? Why don't you ask the residents of this town what they want? Why aren't you making them aware of what you're doing? Why aren't you providing the paperwork and the settlement so that people can see actually what happened? This is the problem with settlements. This is the problem when you put that little, we can't talk about it, okay? And that's not being transparent to the residents of this town. And as a taxpayer, I'm disgusted that you're doing this.
Same thing, Mary, just like they do.
I would love to know what all these settlements are going to cost us. For this gentleman here, who has definitely been hurt by these floods, 800 Sylvan, which is going to hurt the whole town. Can you imagine when we have to build new schools? Because if you put 400 units on that piece of property, and there's one student, whatever it is, and there's one student per household, we cannot sustain that kind of increase in students. And then what about the infrastructure, the sewers, the water, the police? You don't know you know what you're doing, and I wonder what you're getting for it, and that's what bothers me most of all. Okay? We're gonna have to pay for all this. And by the way, Miss Geiger, I love when she gets up here. I want you to know that Miss Geiger cost millions of dollars in the school lawsuits that involved this town when I first moved here. And how much is this gonna cost us? That's what I wanna know, and you're welcome.
Anybody else wishing to be heard?
Hey, I'd like to respond to your questions. Number one, where did you get the information about 400 units? Who have you been talking to? You just picked that number in your head? Oh, you just picked that number in your head? I wonder if you were talking to the mayor. Number two, the 400 number just came to your head, right? Okay. All right, we'll find out. Okay. Number two, to answer your question about the legal bills, right? Do you know that we spent $1.8 million in legal bills last year? In legal fees? Do you know that? Did you know that? Okay. Over the bill. We send it to you. You want us to keep going with the litigations?
Yeah, $2 million.
$2 million. Do you know how much we have that we have to pay?
That man right there.
You know what? Next time I suggest that you get all the facts before you come up here and insult us and accuse us. Legal bills, $1.8 million. I want to know where you got the 400.
Councilwoman, no, stop fighting with the residents,
I'm
please.
not fighting.
You are fighting with the residents. All right, anybody else wishing to be heard?
Are you saying it's 400 this summer?
Okay, Mrs. Valari, please, thank you.
Andrew Nick at 54 Elm Street. I'm glad that the topic was brought up over Normandy, because that is a perfect segue as to what I'd like to talk about. I watched the videotape of the meeting on the 11th, and I saw there was a narrative of the history behind how we got to this point. And one thing that I saw that was missing is the fact that this entire problem with Normandy has been the result of a single person, and that person is the president of the planning board, Russell Perino. We would not be in this position if it weren't for Russell Perino's board not making a good faith effort to work with Normandy instead of flat out rejecting their commercial property. If there was an effort by this planning board to have actually done what past planning boards have done, and just like was done with LG, where after some disagreement, an eventual compromise was made to allow for commercial development, we would have never been put into this position. So the real question is, why was Russ Perino so insistent on fighting Normandy, fighting that project? Now, I don't know the answer to that, but I watched Mr. Perino get in the exact same seat that I was and basically cast blame at everybody else but himself. His board was supposed to work with the applicant. They were supposed to come to an agreement. Now, because his board failed to act properly, and they're going to court tomorrow or the next day, I assume, and we'll see how that turns out. I don't have very much faith that their board will be upheld in their decision based on what I've read in the court filings. So we may very well have a decision tomorrow that the planning board did act arbitrary and capricious. And then guess where we will be? We'll be stuck with Normandy being able to either build commercial, which they probably won't do because it's not as lucrative as residential. And guess what? We're in the position now where we have affordable housing, we have residential, and again, the only person to blame for that is Russell Perino. I would suggest that this mayor and council reverse a mistake that was made by Joe Parisi and bring back the zoning board of adjustment. The planning board is clearly dysfunctional, they're packed with political cronies, and they should be replaced by a different board to make these important decisions. I certainly hope this mayor and council reevaluate the mistake that Joseph Parisi made regarding eliminating the planning board, because to have that board in the hands of Mayor Kranjek's political appointees is disgusting, and it's going to truly cost this town severely and change the way of life of this community.
That's defamatory.
Thank you.
So as usual, Mr. Nikow is all wrong. Mr. Perino, Russ Perino, the planning board president, did a great job. You'd be in a worse position today, at least you would have been in a worse position as of January 3rd. I can't tell you how much worse you are today since Democratic majority control. The thing to remember is that the planning board that I appointed, unlike all prior planning boards, have no conflicts with the town, are not self-interested, don't make money from the town, are not involved in self-dealing, don't own a bank in town, don't sell insurance to everybody in town, do not hire their friends who are engineers who can't seem to calculate the proper diameter for a pipe, or the pre-charging of a system. Okay, so that's my planning board. Juxtapose that, will you stop interrupting?
Your law office.
No, it's not true. You are so wrong. But actually, so...
Not only that, the planning board member that you appointed is suing the town.
Officer, please. They don't have any special privileges. So juxtapose my planning board with the Joe Parisi planning board, and it's very clear whose board is righteous and fair and honest. Thank you. Speaking of...
Which you never disclosed.
Yes.
Another person, still open to the public, people.
Oh, you don't have the floor.
The borough attorney has been speaking badly. He's not really an attorney. He's a political operative. That's why I don't even want him sitting up here. He should be sitting down there.
With the residents, Mayor, please, like you said.
No, I can talk to the residents if I want.
Don't banter with them.
Please, you're taking up Ms. Geiger's time.
My time hasn't started yet.
He did, he started and I saw it.
For Karen Geiger, 270 Alfred. For the record, since 2016, Mr. Mayor, you have cut me off in speaking, and there were numerous instances where residents in this town yielded their time to me. So let's not recreate history.
We're not buying that. No, I'm going to call lies when I hear them. That's a lie. Go ahead.
Everything anybody says other than you is a lie. Okay, our institutions, especially those of government, work because of a sense of decorum. And unfortunately, the tone of each meeting must start with the behavior of the mayor. You cannot do whatever you want up there. That is not your right as mayor under our form of government. You do us a disservice when you cut off residents who you disagree with, when you interrupt them, and when you challenge them. And when you let those who agree with you spew their nonsense or their opinions endlessly. You distract from the business at hand and from the proper functioning of government by the way you behave. This is not a forum for political statements. It's a time to run our government, and it's time that we got back to that. As for your comments themselves, your manipulation of information and your outright lies used to be tiresome, but now they're dangerous. Public officials are always told by their attorneys not to comment on matters of litigation. The lies and distortions that you are presenting on present litigation is egregious. Only one action has caused us to be where we are today: the denial by Russell Perino's planning board of the Normandy application for corporate development at 800 Sylvan in 2017. In all the years of Democratic control, we never had a builder's remedy lawsuit. We saw the LG property rise on property that was coveted by the Fair Share Housing Center. And our share of affordable housing was never more than single digits. We never had vacant land. That was the big issue. Now we do. The denial, Mrs. McMorrow, I'm not debating you. You're in the audience right now. The denial resulted in a corporate decision by Normandy to offer up their 20 acres, which increased the vacant land in this borough and made us ripe for the action they have taken. For the first time, we had significant vacant land. With one irresponsible and unthinking denial, we have an issue to deal with and major litigation costs to fund. And as far as your comments that you're excluded from meetings with Normandy and the Fair Share Housing Center, Mr. Mayor, you had your chance. The court records show
I had a
that
solution.
you did not succeed. Mediation ended without a solution. Over $500,000 was spent fighting Normandy last year, and that didn't even include bills for November, December, and January. Significant months. Trials are expensive, and yes, Ms. Valari, you are right. In 1986, I was president of the Board of Education that unanimously decided to spend over $1 million in legal fees to pursue an ideal, and we lost. And if my experience in LG has taught me anything, it is that negotiation is key to working out problems. LG succeeded because two groups met for over 6 months and worked out their issues and came out with the win-win settlement, not the courts. It's time for others to start to fashion a settlement that might work for our community, rather than the courts, which might impose one that might be a financial disaster. Perhaps the reason the council is not working with Ms. McMorrow and Mr. Perino, is that they don't agree with the plan that they submitted to the court in December before they got on. I'm not going to discuss that plan right now. I discussed it at the planning board meeting, but it is not a good plan, in my opinion, for this community. That plan deals with bonding costs that we, as residents, may have to fund, and it also potentially changes the face of this community as well, because in avoiding giving residential houses on 800 Sylvan, you're changing the entire landscape of this community, building a new police station, a new community center, and changing the town so we'll look like Fort Lee North with 2 or more stories over apartments, over storefronts.
Time, Mrs. Geiger?
Okay. I'll concur with that. Thank you.
Thank you for respecting the time, Mrs. Geiger.
Ms. Geiger, I would have loved to continue listening to you speak in generalities, as you always do, and when you write in the eye of the cliff. Everything you said regarding me, and if you're listening at home and just listen to her spewing, you'll realize that everything she said was generalities with no specifics. No specifics, okay? And the other thing is, well, Russ Perino again did a very good job, And I can't wait to see your next edition of Iron the Cliff and see how you twist all that up, because it's all full of lies, and, please. Regarding affordable housing in Englewood Cliffs, the one thing you didn't mention in your love affair with the past and the history of this town is that even though we have 40 years of obligations to build affordable housing, this town did not build a single unit, okay? All right? So don't forget that, write it in your little publication, and I never know if you're here as a resident or a publisher or an intervener. Oh, and you also forgot to mention to the people at home that you're actually suing the town as well in terms of the intervention, so enough. Anybody else?
The planning board, let's get that straight. Complaint was notarized.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I noticed that your complaint was notarized in Joe Parisi's office. That's so convenient.
People that are calling out, and you're not throwing them out.
Yeah, sure.
Please, order.
Everyone needs to be quiet.
What, are you being quiet right now, sir?
You enforce it.
Okay, please be quiet.
Lauren Eastwood, 4 Willow Drive. The first point I am going to make is that when you have a time limit, if you selectively enforce it, you are opening the borough up to lawsuits. And I would suggest you have your lawyer research the case law. I also want to put it on the record that, for some reason, Councilwoman Park has decided to videotape me.
We're not being objective, so here, you can put in the clock yourself.
Stop arguing with the citizen.
I don't think it's an appropriate behavior from...
She's recording you, by the way, so smile.
I am using the microphone. I also want to point out with respect to Morrow Road, I heard mention of a 15-inch pipe. I don't know what you guys are thinking for $185,000. Willow Drive, which has nowhere near the slope of Tommy Drive, has 2 pipes in it, storm drain pipes in it. And both of them are substantially larger than 15 inches. So just some food for thought. The original storm drain system in Willow Drive consisted of 1 pipe. It was not adequate. While the developer was still there in the late 50s, early 60s, the town held his bond and made him put a second one in. So that's what we're talking about for stormwater, a lot. I'd like to thank Mrs. Savari for admitting on tape that you had already made the decision on the bylaws before the meeting. That's an open public meetings violation, and it makes it very easy to eliminate the bylaws, at least temporarily, because the whole meeting goes out. If somebody intrudes on open public meetings, the whole meeting goes out the door. And that's it, but I just strongly suggest you consult with your lawyer about the ramifications of selectively allowing people to exceed the time limit. It's a lawsuit waiting to happen.
Sounds like...
So for anyone in the public who runs up against Councilman Aversa's 5-minute deadline, which I understand that he was out, but Ellen Park was filling in for him as timekeeper. You did a very good job, except your alarm.
2 minutes, 26 seconds.
Your alarm went off early. But for anybody who's...
Doesn't mean you have to use it all.
So for anybody who's over their time, I'm happy to take whatever you haven't been able to articulate. If it's in writing, hand it to me, and I'll announce it for you with attribution to you. So we'll deal with it. I believe in freedom of speech.
Do that, Mary, if you play games. Does that sound...
Yes, I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand up there.
Blind in this direction, Mary, set the roads out.
Lynn Norton, 9 Willow Drive. In respect of the hour, I will keep this very short. There is one thing I would like to ask this council, and that's to, I guess, draft a resolution, create a resolution, hopefully pass it tonight, that political diatribes are not allowed to be sent out through borough email. Borough email is to be used only for specific borough information such as DPW pickups, such as recreation. Those of us who gave our emails did not give it so that we could get a political diatribe from the mayor. That's, I would hazard a guess, contains as much fiction as it does fact. So I would implore this council to take care of that tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Good idea.
So, I have an obligation to the borough to keep everyone informed. So, I'm sorry, I don't know if you heard that because Mr. Wunsch was clearing his throat. I have an obligation as mayor to keep the borough and our citizens informed of what goes on here, and I wish more people would attend these meetings. So if I communicate with them and you don't like the communication, the facts that I communicate are all facts. You should talk to your fellow council members, or your council representatives, and tell them to start behaving differently, and the facts will be different.
Or perhaps we'll just
Okay,
have to say that's something.
Anybody else in the public wishing to be heard? She was out of order, but,
parents of Englewood
does anybody...
tired of looking at your email.
Does anybody else have anything to say? The attorney from Beatty Padavano, maybe? Anybody? You've been sitting there for 5 hours now.
All in favor? Aye.
All right, you want to close? Motion to close?
It's been made a motion.
All in favor?
Second?
Aye.
Got a second?
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, all right, we're done. We're done with the, so I think the next thing up is payment of claims, Resolution 19-64. Claims from January 16, 2019 through February 13, 2019, $4,246,988.05. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Can I have a roll call, please?
Councilpersons Wu,
Yes.
Song,
Yes.
Sabari,
Yes.
Park,
Yes.
Aversa.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
Thank you. So next up is the ordinance 2019-02, which I completely disagree with. I vetoed the first pass of this, and doesn't look like this one was done any better, so stay tuned. Can I have a motion to open to the public for, so it's an ordinance of the Borough of Englewood Cliffs repealing ordinance 18-18, entitled Public Contracting Reform Ordinance in its entirety of the Code of the Borough of Englewood Cliffs. So this is the ordinance that repeals the no pay-to-play ordinance that we put in place, so that people who had conflicts with the borough can't make money from the borough, or people who donated to campaigns can't make money from the borough. The council is now introducing this. I am not introducing this. They are.
That's how it works.
open to the public?
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. Can I have a motion?
No, it was a
Was all
motion.
all in favor? We did all that? All right. Yes.
Lauren Eastwood, Four Willow Drive. I am opposed to this ordinance. It just smacks of corruption.
That's
You know,
supposed to. That's why they want it.
people pay campaign donations, and in return, they get a position, even if there are lots of issues with them. I think Boswell is an excellent example of that. Boswell has been a large donor to Democratic campaigns for years. And you can get the numbers off of ELEX reports. So there's no question about them being a large donor. There have been multiple complaints about malfeasance, incompetence in their work. We have Morrow Road, we have 6 Willow Drive, we have 5th Street, and in most towns, that would have been enough to get a borough engineer fired a long time ago. And I think the fact that Boswell is even on the table speaks to the need of a pay-to-play ordinance, because no town with any sense would be hiring back an engineer after everything that's happened with Boswell.
Thank you. I should also note that the people I've appointed over the last 3 years were all in compliance with the terms of that ordinance, and I wish that would continue. I don't like the fact that we're changing that. It hurts taxpayers. Yes, sir.
You're getting good at that.
There was a cartoon character that could do that. I forget which one it was. Gumby, yes. Going full Gumby over there.
I've never been called Gumby before, but it's okay. Could be a lot
Well,
worse.
you made it through a very narrow passage there.
Name and address?
Dave DiGregorio, 165 Charlotte Place, at about 11 o'clock in the evening. 11:10, thank you.
Yeah, about 3 more hours to go.
So, our fellow resident on Morrow seems to be very knowledgeable about engineering and capacities and things of that nature. When I first started to attend the council meetings, I thought the borough engineer was actually an employee of the borough.
Excuse me, sir, we can only speak to the no pay-to-play repeal.
I am, that's what I'm getting to that. So, basically, you had Mazer, and they were suggesting all kinds of things that were, bandstands and everything else, and they were under the control of the party in power at the time. And I would think that, and I know that other boroughs will hire actual engineers or people that are knowledgeable about drainage and about facts and problem solvers. And I think those kind of people that are really knowledgeable about that can save the borough a ton of money. So the pay-to-play, I don't know the particulars of it. I trust that there are no people that are sitting on the council that are getting kickbacks. I don't think that's the way this works. I think everyone up there is honest, and I trust them to make the right decisions about this issue. But I would say that, in addition to that you really need to have people that are intimately knowledgeable that can come up with facts. If you're knowledgeable about something and you give advice without any strings attached, under any political thumb, you're going to save the town a ton of money. So I'd like to state that, and in the name of efficiency, possibly our own borough engineer would be something to consider.
To hire somebody from the borough, so you from the borough, like as an employee?
I'm just saying that that we need to have expertise, and when you have expertise, you have the ability of saving a lot of money. Thank you.
No, sir. Yes.
It looks good.
I'll stay on this time. Andrew Nick at 54 Elm Street. With regards to this ordinance repealing the earlier pay-to-play ordinance, I am concerned that the original ordinance, and I believe Anne Marie Rizzuto, the previous borough attorney, did indicate that the ordinance passed by the previous administration was most likely unconstitutional. And if I do recall, there were already several legal challenges by professionals looking to do competitive bidding. I believe there were 2 of them that were already lined up to challenge this law. The law prior that was in effect regarding pay-to-play was modeled after the state law, I believe, so we met the minimum compliance with state regulation, and I just see that what was proposed just would invite additional lawsuits to the borough and of course incur additional spending on legal fees. I believe that just so long as we're in compliance with state law, that we are good to go on that. You may not like it, that would be a thing that we could go to our state legislators and ask them to increase or beef up the state pay-to-play laws. But to put us in a position where we have an ordinance on the books that, by the own admission of Anne Marie Rizzuto, was likely unconstitutional and could easily be challenged, I don't see it as a net benefit to this community.
Thank you.
Okay, that's a point of clarification. I think you're misstating, and your time is done. I think you're misstating what Anne Marie Rizzuto said.
No,
So
she
just for-
clearly said,
No.
she clearly said,
We
Mayor,
went from
she
having-
clearly
I-
said,
I was
Mayor,
speaking.
at the December meeting in which this was passed, that this would most likely face a court challenge.
That's not what she
And
said.
she believed that it was unconstitutional.
That's not what you said.
I can pull the meeting for you.
Have a seat, thank you.
Ooh, don't insult the resident, Mario.
Well, you know, if you're not going to tell the truth, then you shouldn't come up. Right. So here's the thing. Here's the thing. We went from now having the strictest no pay-to-play ordinance in the state of New Jersey to having a very mediocre, corruption-inviting repeal of it. So, yes.
You just invite additional comment by your distortion of what goes on. Mr. Mayor, Anne Marie Rizzuto did say...
Name and address.
Oh, I'm sorry, Karen Geiger, 270 Alfred. Anne Marie Rizzuto did state that it was likely that the pay-to-play ordinance that you had put forward would have been challenged in the courts. She did make that statement at a meeting. Number two, pay-to-play ordinance, we are governed by state law. We do not give jobs to people in return for their money. We have to get involved in a fair and equitable process. RFQs have to be submitted, and the council appoints, after evaluating those RFQs and their needs, who they wish to have advise them. That is their right as a council, and that's what the law condones. It doesn't condone corruption. It doesn't condone any of the things that you state that it does. It's there to set up an equitable and fair process by which people who are professionals can be appointed, period. And you should not distort it to make it be something that it isn't. Another comment is Mr. Wunsch said that the former resolution or ordinance was not registered, and by not being registered, it did not have the force of law and was null and void. And I have a question for the council, which is, why are we even doing this? Why don't you go ahead and appoint whoever it is you want to appoint right now or at the next meeting? Because if the prior resolution is null and void on its face, then you don't have to repeal it. It doesn't exist.
I believe it's suspect what happened there, so that's always interesting, right? You know, if things were so fair in the past, before I had my no pay-to-play ordinance, the good doctor from Morrow Road would not have had to just spend the last 5 years or 10 years dealing with the problems that result from pay-to-play, okay? So, Ms. Geiger, I completely disagree with you, more on this point than on any other point tonight, but I think you might have another chance to speak later. Yes.
Mary O'Shea, 12 Irving Avenue. I am not in favor of the repeal of the ordinance, because basically, right now, that leaves us with nothing. If the council majority felt that they were not pleased with the ordinance that was in effect, it would have been much more appropriate for them to amend the ordinance and make the changes to it that they felt were unfair to applicants and professionals. I don't believe professionals should contribute to political campaigns. I don't believe they should buy tickets to dinner dances, music studio shows, retirement dinners, honorary dinners, and all of the such, which cumulatively add up to donations to political parties. I think that the ordinance that was in effect, although it was very rigid, the purpose was to have people that work for the town without any political complications. So, right now, you're going to repeal this, but then we have nothing. And I think you should replace it with something that you feel is not as limiting, but we should have something. We shouldn't have nothing, okay? And not just to require or rely on the state guidelines, okay? So, while you're doing and thinking and whatever you're doing, maybe, one time when you have a caucus, the comments that went on tonight during the discussion about Clifton Terrace, that's the type of conversation you should have during a caucus about items that you are putting on the agenda, items that you are contemplating like this. You should be discussing them in public and come to a consensus and change those things accordingly, not the way you're doing it, okay? And so I am against this blanket repeal, because now you have nothing. And I'm going to fill my water bottle.
So just by a show of hands, who here is in favor of a strict no-pay-to-play ordinance? Okay, anybody else wishing to be heard? It's a vast majority of people, yeah. Yes.
Yes. Just like how Debbie and Jim won by a small margin.
Is it on zero?
No, it's on 5.
They count down. You can't count up, you gotta count down.
Carol McMorrow, 49 Summit Street. What Anne Marie Rizzuto said is that it could be challenged. She didn't say it was unconstitutional. She said it could be challenged. Mayor, it is very strict. They have the votes. They're going to repeal it. I happen to agree with Mary O'Shea. I hope that you will implement some form of a pay-to-play. It's necessary. Councilwoman Sabari made a comment before she got sworn in that she needs money for her campaign. Well, that's not everybody else's problem. It's on tape. She knows she said that. If she needs money for her
Let's still take
campaign...
it out of context.
Ouch.
Go ahead. It's your 5 minutes. It's your 5 minutes. Go ahead.
My 5 minutes, stop interrupting me. If she needs money for her campaign, then she needs to raise it. But what she should not be doing is going to professionals and have them donate money to her campaign so that she can run an election. Go to your friends. Go to people outside. But don't go to professionals. So what you should do is implement a less strict version of not allowed to donate to Englewood Cliffs campaigns. Okay? Go back, if you feel 1 year, 3 years, whatever you feel is proper. But you should not be allowed to donate to local elections, and then you're going to vote to put Marinello, Boswell, Wilcox, or any of these people that gave you thousands and thousands of dollars so that you can then give them a job. That's pay to play. That's wrong. You're not doing a service for the residents because they're giving you money. You're benefiting from that and giving them a job in return. It's wrong on every level. And by the way, our code of ethics, I'm pretty sure we're not allowed to take any type of gratuities or donation over a $10 value. I don't remember which code of ethics it is, Mayor. I can look it up. You all need to look into that. No more than $10.
No, actually, that's why it was problematic, that I once bought all those pizzas tonight.
Not even take a bottle of wine, okay, if it was valued over $10. So
I'm in trouble for the pizzas?
You are.
He's joking. So
I implore you.
What did I say? Somebody Barbie against the wall?
Ladies and gentlemen,
I've been accused of so many things tonight.
well, okay. Well, no, they're not gonna, okay, so, but that is a fact. Not more than $10 are allowed to, are not allowed to be donated. So I hope you will listen and come up with something a little less strict than.
So actually, if you think about like what's happened in New Jersey and in the country, this makes, it's so taxpayer unfriendly to repeal a no-pay-to-play statute or ordinance because you just keep floating the budget for taxpayers because you're taking care of people. It's our town, and then it's our county, and it's just hundreds of towns, and then it's the states. It's a mess. This is why we're the way we are. You got a bad cold. You sure you want to be here? Anybody else? Anybody else?
Oh, Glenn? Oh, you? Gumby?
Be careful. I've never seen anybody get around that, except me.
We should all try it.
That should be the test if you could come to the microphone.
That's
You have to
right.
do that.
Northwest 26 John Street. You know, pay to play is a hell of a game. And I'd like to just ask, when our engineer looked to make this part of the south side a rehabilitation zone, and couldn't find any way to do it, and he looked in the ground, he said, Jesus Christ, we have 85-year-old sewers. That makes it. I'd like to ask you something, Mr. Mayor. How much did they get paid? To me, that's pay to play.
Who got
engineer?
He was rendering a service. You are so hopelessly wrong, yes.
He was paid for it.
No. Nope.
paid?
You don't understand how no pay to play works. Let me explain it to you. You asked me a question. You asked me a question.
Pay to play is a quid pro quo. Don't tell me what it is.
Yeah, you're wrong. You're wrong.
I'm wrong.
I'll tell you what it is.
It's not the envelope, my man. It's a job.
Have a seat. Please. Have a seat. No pay to play is triggered when people are being retained to render services. Once they're retained, and they render services that are requested of them, and they're compensated for that, just like anyone else. I mean, you've had hundreds of buildings, right? Well,
Like you.
we won't go.
Judge doesn't have to tell me. I'll get this part if I don't pay.
We won't go there tonight.
Oh, okay.
Anybody else?
Anybody else?
Anybody else?
It's getting late.
It's 11:30 almost. Okay, we gotta finish the meetings on the same day it starts. All right, any motion to close? All in favor?
Who was that, Aversa and,
Oh. All right, so, resolutions 2019.
no, we got to vote on the ordinance.
Oh, okay.
Nice try, Mayor.
Motion to adopt.
Seeing if you're still awake.
Second.
Hold on.
Oh, was there a second already?
Yes, second.
Okay, vote on,
Ordinance 2019-02.
okay, who,
Is that attached, actually?
who
I made the
motioned it?
motion, Debbie seconded.
Is the resolution, is the ordinance attached? I heard it.
Aversa, yes, sir. Debbie seconded? Okay. Councilpersons Wu?
I was really happy having the strictest pay-to-play ordinance. I think in everyone's heart of heart tonight, after listening to the Morrow Road situation, I think it's pretty clear what was done there was completely wrong. And it's unfortunate. You know, a lot of people were hurt, a lot of homes. Everyone's reflecting on what this gentleman had to say. If Boswell is running a legitimate business, they should be coming back and fixing it. Full stop. So I'm going to say absolutely no.
Song?
Yes.
Sabari?
Yes.
Park?
Yes.
Aversa?
Yes.
Oh.
All those campaign promises down the sewer. That's a Boswell thing, right? So, they repealed it. Now, there's no pay to play. I will most likely veto this again, so stay tuned. You may actually have to reintroduce it. I think so, because you guys obviously haven't read it. So resolutions, 2019, yeah, sorry.
Do you want to do a consent agenda for everything?
If we could, it'd be great.
Can I make a recommendation, Mr. Wunsch?
Yes,
Can we, ask for a consent agenda on
not a
everything?
problem.
And I'll take a vote on it?
Yes.
Is everyone, I'd like a motion for a consent agenda. Hold on one second.
So it's consent voting on all the resolutions here.
Consent agenda. If someone can make a motion? Councilpersons Wu,
Sorry, can you let me know
Yes?
what that means?
that you could vote on all of them all together.
Mr. Wunsch said we could do
Sorry,
it.
number 71 was not, we don't have a,
So we'll pull it?
Right, pull
Okay, so we're not
71.
voting on 71.
I'm gonna vote.
No, we're not voting on everything yet, we're just voting to vote for all of it together.
Okay, that's fine, yes.
Okay. Sabari? Park?
Yes.
Aversa? Oh, okay, so I'm gonna take a vote. Oh, so, okay, all right, so, this is, let me borrow shoot a second. So, we're voting on resolutions 65 through 70, and 72, and 73. No, 71. Can I have a motion? Can I have a second?
Second.
Councilpersons Wu,
Yes to all, no to 70, no to 73.
Song,
Yes.
Sabari,
Yes.
Park,
Yes.
Aversa, Oh,
Yes, to all.
okay. That saved an hour.
Okay, so ordinance 2019, first reading, public hearing to be on March 13, 2019, which I believe is the next regular meeting. 2019-03, model ordinance to exceed the municipal budget appropriation limits and to establish a cap bank under NJSA 40A:4-45.14. Can anyone, well, actually, Mr. Wunsch, why don't you explain what that is to the public?
Which one are we doing now? I'm sorry.
The first ordinance.
Is that the COLA?
Yeah, the,
Just
I will turn it over to the Borough Administrator.
It's allowing to raise, your budget funds consistent with, cost of living.
Raise your...
It's to raise funds in the budget, consistent with, cost of living.
So on the revenue side or the expense side?
Surplus? It goes to surplus?
What is our surplus?
Mayor, what is it? Come on, really?
I don't know. I mean,
You know what?
all right, it's
I'm not.
okay. All right, fine. Maybe, just send me that tomorrow. 2019-04. Oh, wait, we need to have a vote on this, actually.
Right,
All
so,
I need a motion for this.
Second.
who moved it?
I think Alan moved it.
No, we're doing it first, and Ellen seconded it. Councilpersons Wu,
Yes.
Sung,
Yes.
Sabari,
Yes.
Park,
Yes.
Aversa, Oh.
Yes.
Okay, so that's been introduced.
1904?
It's 1904, now that has the same public hearing?
Yeah.
March 13, 2019, and it's an ordinance amending the code of the Borough of Englewood Cliffs, Chapter 2, Sections 2-13.16, entitled Fees in Regard to Traffic Control and Workplace Safety to Establish and Dedicate an Administrative Fee. There's an extra comma at the end there. So, can you just tell the public what
Okay.
the background of that is?
So 1904 is an ordinance and resolution that was done in 2017 to add administrative fee to traffic jobs throughout town when there's construction, utility, public events, bicyclists when they do the Grand Fondo. There's a fee that we want to charge them, and that fee goes towards DARE and other police programs. So with that, we want to not increase the fee, but we want to make sure that it's not just for construction companies and utility companies. That's what the current ordinance says. We want to stretch it out to other events as well. That's it.
Okay,
So the borough can benefit.
and by the way, the Grand Fondo is in 97 days, so you still have time to train for it.
We need a motion? Second?
Second.
Councilpersons Wu,
Yes.
Song,
Yes.
Sabari, Park,
Yes.
Aversa, Oh.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So can we have committee and council member reports? Let's start with Councilman Wu. Just state your committee or committees, Paul, and just fill us in.
Nothing to report on historical.
Okay, Councilman Song, anything?
I'm in conjunction with the DPW, sanitation. I've had opportunity to meet with Mark. Just briefly, we're just discussing some work that needs to be done to sort of upgrade the facilities. Number one, we had a very nice meeting with him, and he had a budget that he wanted to propose to me and the committee that we're going to review. Number two, we had meetings with PSNG to discuss some potential upgrades to sort of the cast iron pipes.
No.
Yeah, just move it closer.
Okay. To upgrade the cast iron pipes to plastic. Apparently there's money available. There's a lot of information there, and just we were there for I think a couple of hours just going over their plan. Their plan is initially to sort of focus on the south side of Englewood Cliffs and it'll be an extensive project, but the benefit to the resident is we'll get, upgrades to the gas lines that are in need of repairs and upgrade. Trying to think if there's anything else.
The last time this was done was 2016.
2016?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I think that's it.
That's it. Good.
Okay. I chair the Finance Committee. I think that's the only one I chair. So we've started meetings. I met with DPW, with Jimmy, and I'm going to be meeting with the...
I was on that meeting as well.
Yes, you were? So we're in the process of getting ready for our budget and trying to gather all the information. It's in the works. I'm on the committees that I can't talk about. So that's about it for now.
So I'm on Board of Health. We haven't had a meeting thus this year, but I'm also on the Rec Committee, and we are working on, as the mayor knows, that we are working on trying to repair the infield of Woody Field. It's been a hazard. Many kids are getting hurt, and so we're trying to have all of the infield at Woody Field fixed before baseball season. So let's hope that's going to happen.
Which committee is yours?
Police.
You have nothing to report on police?
Not at this time.
You have so much going on in January.
There's a lot. There's nothing
There's nothing to report.
Nothing that I'd like to share at this moment.
Wow. Councilwoman O?
Transportation. So on January 24th, I had an opportunity to attend County Department of Transportation meeting. They were talking about the grant program for the senior bus, and I was advised that in this cycle, they didn't have too many applicants from Bergen County. I'm very hopeful that we get approved. We will know one way or another by end of March. So I'm looking forward to reporting back some good news, and that's it for this month.
Thank you. I have one thing to report. The residents of Van Nostrand asked for a meeting with LG Electronics regarding the building that's being built. You may have seen it. It's kind of small. They were concerned about construction, noise, egress and ingress from their street, data completion, landscaping, and so we had a meeting today at Borough Hall. it was kind of a last-minute thing, and the residents showed up with their agenda, the LG officials, including a C-suite person showed up, and it was a quick meeting, about 30 minutes. They went through everything. LG's doing a fantastic job. They're going to move their construction, to get rid of their construction trailers by the end of March, middle of April, and move the construction people the office workers into the building itself, so that eyesore will be gone. They're going to start doing the landscaping at some point soon as well, and making the appearance of the construction site look better from the backyards on Van Nostrand, those backyards that are facing north. The construction's working from north to south. It'll all be pretty much, the building will all be closed up by middle of April, and then just the inside work will be done. The building should be completed in mid-December. So they're very excited. I saw renderings of the plantings. The residents were happy. They were pleased with what it's going to look like. They're planting 1,500 new trees on the project, and 700 of those trees are actually behind the backyards facing north from Van Nostrand, so there'll be a berm there as well, so the residents there will basically not see the building. It'll be interspersed with evergreens, but it's all going to be trees and plantings that are indigenous to this area. They had a super tree expert from Washington, and it's just a major endeavor. They're doing a great job. There's a couple of different issues on Van Nostrand in terms of, if you're coming out of Van Nostrand and you're turning north, it's a difficult left turn to make, so we're trying to get the residents a remote control access gate to have them go out to 9W, because it's not a through street right now, out to 9W to turn north, and it'll be easier for them that way. So we're working on that, and trying to price it out, and obviously trying to get LG to pay for it. So that's all I have. Can I have a motion to adjourn? There's one more thing, sorry.
So on correspondence, I gave everyone a letter from NJDOT, LG Corporate Headquarters. It talks about different things in the letter, but it says that they're requesting a letter from the borough stating that we will pay for the electric that's on the traffic light on Sylvan and Middlesex. So, I can't write that letter. The letter would have to be written by the borough attorney, so we just need to give him authorization that he can write the letter. Yes, everyone's okay?
I'm fine, if he writes it.
Okay, that's it.
It's better than the certifications that he's been writing, so good luck.
I've been accused of private play.
Can I have a motion to adjourn, please?
So moved. Second.
All in favor? See, we still have comedy at 11:40.